The pregnancy test sat on the marble counter like a loaded gun. Lena Carter stared at the two pink lines, her hands trembling so violently she had to grip the sink to stay upright. This was impossible. Adrian Volkov, her husband, her captor, the man who'd bought her like property to save her dying mother, had sworn he could never father children. It was the one mercy in their brutal contract. But the test didn't lie, and neither did the chaos of memories flooding back from their wedding night. When Adrian discovered this truth, would he protect her or destroy her? If you want to see how far this story reaches, hit that like button and comment with your city below. Now, let me tell you how a desperate bargain became something far more dangerous than either of them could have imagined. The fluorescent lights of Save More Convenience buzzed with the persistent hum of a dying insect, casting sickly yellow pools across rows of potato chips and energy drinks that nobody wanted at 2 in the morning. Lena Carter stood behind the bulletproof partition, her reflection ghosting across the scratched plexiglass, hollow-eyed, pale, 23 years old, and already exhausted in ways that sleep couldn't fix. Outside, November rain hammered against the windows like fists demanding entry. She'd been awake for 19 hours straight. Her shift at the store started at 10 p.m., but before that she'd spent the day at St. Catherine's Hospital, watching machines breathe for her mother. Acute myeloid leukemia, the doctor said, as if giving it a name made it less like watching someone dissolve from the inside out. There was a treatment, experimental, promising, brutally expensive. The kind of expensive that made the hospital billing department look at Lena with the practiced sympathy reserved for lost causes. $200,000. It might as well have been $200 million. The door chime rang. Lena's hand moved instinctively toward the panic button beneath the counter, because nobody who came into a convenience store at 2:47 a.m. brought good news with them. But the man who stepped through the doorway didn't look like the usual desperate junkies or kids looking to steal beer. He looked like money. Expensive charcoal suit, perfectly tailored despite the rain. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes so pale they were almost colorless in the harsh lighting. He moved with the fluid precision of a predator, water sliding off his coat like even the weather knew better than to cling to him. 2 more men followed him inside. Big, silent, wearing the kind of watchful intensity that made Lena's survival instincts scream. The first man approached the counter. Up close, Lena could see the expensive watch on his wrist, the subtle gleam of cufflinks, the faint scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He studied her with the clinical assessment of someone evaluating livestock. Lena Carter. It wasn't a question. His voice carried this trace of an accent, Russian, maybe Ukrainian, smoothed by years of American schools, but not quite erased. Her throat went dry. We're closed. The sign says 24 hours. Yeah, well, I'm closing early. You need to leave. One of the bodyguards moved closer to the counter. The first man raised a hand, stopping him with a gesture so slight it barely qualified as movement. My name is Adrian Volkov, he said, and waited. Lena had heard that name. Everyone in the city had heard that name. Even people who tried very hard not to pay attention to the kind of business that happened in shadows and back rooms. Adrian Volkov owned half the waterfront, 3 casinos, and more politicians than most corporations. The newspapers called him a prominent businessman. The streets called him something else entirely. I don't want any trouble, Lena said, hating how small her voice sounded. Neither do I. Adrian Volkov pulled out his phone, tapped something, then turned the screen toward her. Your mother, Patricia Carter. Stage 3 AML. She has perhaps 6 weeks without treatment. 4, more realistically. The image showed her mother's medical chart. Private information, protected information. Lena felt her chest constrict. How did you... I'm offering you a solution. He pocketed the phone. A business arrangement that benefits us both. I don't have anything you could possibly want. You're wrong. Those pale eyes fixed on her with uncomfortable intensity. I need a wife. You need money for your mother's treatment. I propose a transaction. For a moment, Lena thought she'd misheard. The buzzing lights, the exhaustion, the surreal quality of a man like Adrian Volkov standing in her shitty convenience store at 3 in the morning. It all felt like a fever dream. You're insane. I'm practical. He pulled an envelope from inside his coat, placed it on the counter between them. $200,000. Immediate payment to St. Catherine's Hospital. Additional funds for your living expenses. In exchange, you marry me. The arrangement lasts 1 year, after which we divorce quietly, and you walk away with another 100,000. Lena stared at the envelope. She didn't touch it. Why? That's not relevant to our transaction. It's relevant to me. You could have any woman in the city. Models, socialites, women who actually belong in your world. Why would you want... She gestured at herself, at the stained Save More vest and the dark circles under her eyes. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Not quite emotion, more like the memory of it. I need a wife who understands that this is business, nothing more. Someone who won't develop inconvenient expectations. Someone disposable. Someone practical, he corrected. Like yourself. You're working 3 jobs to pay for treatment you can't afford. Your landlord has filed eviction papers. You haven't eaten a full meal in 4 days. I'm not offering you romance, Miss Carter. I'm offering you survival. The envelope sat between them like a dare. Lena's hands were shaking again. She shoved them in her pockets. There has to be a catch. Several. Adrian's voice remained perfectly level, as if they were discussing a car lease. You'll live in my home. You'll appear with me at necessary social functions. You'll sign a prenuptial agreement specifying exactly what you receive and when, and you'll tell no one the true nature of our arrangement. To the world, we're a legitimate couple. What about... Lena felt her face heat. I mean, do you expect... No. The word came sharp and immediate. Our arrangement is purely contractual. I have no interest in that kind of relationship with you or anyone else. There was something cold in the way he said it, something final. Why not? Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I can't have children. Medical condition. It's not something I discuss, but given the nature of our arrangement, you deserve to know there will be no complications in that regard. Our marriage will be entirely professional. Lena looked at the envelope again. $200,000. Her mother's life. 4 more weeks without treatment, the doctors had said. Maybe less. I need to think about it. You have until 6 a.m. Adrian pulled out a business card, placed it next to the envelope. My driver will be outside. If you accept, take the envelope and get in the car. If not, walk away and we never speak again. But your mother doesn't have time for lengthy deliberations, Miss Carter. Neither of us do. He turned and walked out, his guards following like shadows. The door chime rang again, absurdly cheerful. Lena was alone with the buzzing lights and an envelope that weighed more than paper should. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a cashier's check made out to St. Catherine's Hospital. $200,000. Real. Legitimate. Signed. Attached to it was a single sheet of paper covered in dense legal text. She forced herself to read it, though the words swam in her exhausted vision. It was all there, exactly as he'd said. Marriage. 1 year, divorce. Separate bedrooms. No physical relationship. Compensation detailed to the dollar. And at the bottom, 2 signature lines. Lena pulled out her phone and called the hospital. The night nurse answered on the 3rd ring. Hi, yes, this is Lena Carter. I'm calling about my mother, Patricia Carter. How is she? A pause. No change, honey, but we need to discuss next steps for her care. The treatment window is... I know. Lena closed her eyes. I know. I'll be there in the morning. I have news about the payment. She ended the call and stared at the check. Outside, a black Mercedes waited at the curb, rain streaming down its windshield. The driver was a silhouette behind the wheel, patient as death. 4 more weeks. Maybe less. Lena thought about her mother's smile, back when she used to smile. The way she'd braided Lena's hair before school. The 2 of them in their cramped apartment after Dad left, eating cereal for dinner and pretending it was an adventure. Her mother had worked herself to exhaustion to keep them fed, warm, alive. She'd sacrificed everything, and now Lena could save her. All it would cost was 1 year, 1 year of living with a stranger, 1 year of being property dressed up as partnership, 1 year of her life for all of her mother's remaining years. Lena picked up the envelope and walked out into the rain. The Mercedes smelled like leather and expensive cologne. The driver didn't speak, didn't even look at her as she slid into the back seat with her Save More vest still on and rain dripping from her hair. He simply pulled into traffic and drove. They headed toward the waterfront, where the city's old money kept their fortresses. Lena watched the neighborhoods change through the window, from her world of pawn shops and boarded windows to tree-lined streets and iron gates that cost more than her annual salary. The car turned onto a private road that wound up a hillside. At the top sat a house that redefined Lena's understanding of the word. It wasn't a house. It was a statement. 3 stories of stone and glass that looked like it had grown from the cliff itself, all sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the city lights spreading below like a circuit board. The gates opened automatically. The car stopped in a circular driveway where a fountain still ran despite the late hour, water illuminated by hidden lights. "Miss Carter?" A woman appeared at the car door, 50-something, gray hair in a tight bun, wearing a black dress that spoke of household management. "I'm Mrs. Chen. I oversee the house staff. Mr. Volkov is waiting in his study." The interior of the house matched its exterior, all cold elegance and controlled space. Marble floors, minimalist furniture, art on the walls that Lena suspected was real, and probably cost more than her mother's treatment. Mrs. Chen led her through halls that seemed designed to make people feel small. The study was smaller than the other rooms, but no less intimidating. Bookshelves lined 2 walls. A desk dominated the space, and behind it sat Adrian Volkov, still in his suit despite the hour. A man in an expensive cardigan stood beside the desk, older, 60s, with the careful posture of someone who dealt in documents. "Miss Carter," Adrian gestured to a chair. "This is Robert Park, my attorney. He'll witness the contract signing." Lena sat. The chair was uncomfortable by design, she thought. Keep visitors off balance. Robert placed papers on the desk, thick stacks of them. "The prenuptial agreement," he said in a voice like aged whiskey. "I'll need to review each section with you. This will take approximately 2 hours." "She doesn't have 2 hours," Adrian said quietly. "Summarize." Robert's eyebrows rose fractionally, but he nodded. "The agreement specifies that this marriage is contractual in nature. Upon signing, you'll receive the sum already provided for medical expenses. You'll reside here for 1 year from the date of marriage. During that time, you'll attend designated social functions as Mr. Volkov's wife. You'll have a monthly allowance of $5,000 for personal expenses. At the end of 1 year, divorce proceedings will be initiated. Upon divorce, you'll receive $100,000 and sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the nature of your marriage. You waive all claims to Mr. Volkov's assets beyond what's specified here. Infidelity voids the contract. Do you understand?" Lena's mouth was dry. "What defines infidelity in a marriage that isn't real?" "Physical or romantic involvement with anyone other than your spouse," Robert said. "The same standard that would apply to any marriage." "So I can't date anyone for a year." "Correct." Adrian's voice cut in. "Neither can I. The agreement is symmetrical. What I'm asking of you, I'm binding myself to as well." "What about after? The NDA prevents you from disclosing the contractual nature of our marriage or any details of my business affairs you might witness. It doesn't prevent you from living your life or speaking generally about your experience. But if you violate it, the penalty is the return of all compensation plus damages." Lena looked at the papers. Her hands were still shaking. "If I sign this, we get married when?" "Tomorrow," Adrian said. "City Hall, 10 a.m. Simple civil ceremony, after which the check goes to the hospital and your mother begins treatment by evening." "Tomorrow. Less than 8 hours from now." "I need a pen," Lena heard herself say. Robert produced one, heavy, expensive, probably worth more than her car. Lena took it and began signing, page after page, initials in margins, full signature at the bottom. Her hand cramped. She kept signing. When she reached the final page, she paused. This was it. The last moment she could walk away, return to her life of exhaustion and desperation and watching her mother die by degrees. She signed. Adrian signed after her, his signature a sharp slash of ink. Robert witnessed both, added his own signature, then gathered the papers with the efficiency of long practice. "Congratulations," he said, and it sounded like condolences. "You're engaged." Mrs. Chen appeared as if summoned by telepathy. "Your room is prepared, Miss Carter?" "Her room is prepared," Adrian corrected, still seated behind his desk. "She'll need appropriate clothing for tomorrow. Contact Susan at Bergdorf's. Have her send selections." "Of course, sir." Lena stood, feeling disconnected from her body. "What time tomorrow?" "The car leaves at 9:30. Adrian's attention had already shifted to his computer screen. Mrs. Chen will ensure you have everything you need. Dismissed. Like an employee after a meeting. Lena followed Mrs. Chen back into the halls, up a curved staircase to the second floor. The bedroom she was led to was larger than the apartment Lena shared with her mother. King bed, separate sitting area, attached bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. Your belongings will be retrieved tomorrow, Mrs. Chen said. For tonight, you'll find necessities in the bathroom. Breakfast is at 7, but I can have something sent to your room if you prefer. This is fine. Thank you. Mrs. Chen nodded and left, closing the door with a soft click. Lena stood in the center of the room, still wearing her Save More vest, rain damp and shivering despite the perfect climate control. She walked to the window. From this height, the city looked almost beautiful. All lights and no details, the ugliness hidden by distance. She pulled out her phone and called the hospital again. Hi, it's Lena Carter. I need to speak with Dr. Morrison about my mother's treatment. Yes, I'll hold. Dr. Morrison came on the line a minute later, sounding tired. Lena, it's almost 4 in the morning. I know, I'm sorry, but I have the money, the full amount for the treatment. I can have it transferred first thing in the morning. A pause. Lena, where did you bounce? Does it matter? Another pause. Longer. No, I suppose it doesn't. If the funds clear, we can start treatment immediately. I'll need you to come in and sign consent forms. I'll be there by noon. Lena, this treatment, it's not a guarantee. You understand that, right? Your mother is very sick. The leukemia is aggressive. Even with treatment, the survival rate, I know. Lena's reflection stared back at her from the window, a ghost against the city lights. But it's a chance. That's all I need. After ending the call, she sat on the edge of the enormous bed and let herself feel it. The weight of what she'd just done. She'd sold herself. Dressed it up in legal language and monthly allowances, but that's what it was. 1 year of being Adrian Volkov's wife, his possession, his business arrangement. She thought about his words. I can't have children. Medical condition. At least there was that. At least this prison had walls she could see, limits she could understand. 1 year. No physical relationship. Just an act for the cameras, a signature on documents, a warm body at social functions. She could survive 1 year of anything. Lena stood and walked to the bathroom. The mirror showed her exhaustion in high definition. Dark circles, lank hair, the kind of bone-deep weariness that came from too many nights like this. She turned on the shower, made it hot enough to hurt, and stepped under the spray still fully clothed. The water turned gray with the dirt of her real life swirling down the drain. When she finally stripped and washed properly, the steam had turned the bathroom into a cloud. She dried off with towels softer than anything she'd ever owned and found a drawer full of expensive pajamas, tags still attached. She picked the simplest set, black silk that felt like sin against her skin. The bed swallowed her when she lay down. She thought she'd never sleep, wired on adrenaline and fear and the surreal quality of everything that had happened. But exhaustion won. Her eyes closed. Her last thought before darkness took her was of her mother's face, smiling in a memory from before everything went wrong. She'd made the right choice. She had to believe that. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows in a moment of complete disorientation. The room was wrong. The bed was wrong. Everything was... Memory crashed back. The contract. Adrian Volkov. The wedding at 10. She grabbed her phone. 8:47 a.m. Shit! Lena threw off the covers and stumbled toward the bathroom. A shower, toothbrush still in packaging, expensive skincare products she had no idea how to use. She did her best, rushing through it all. When she emerged, she found the bedroom transformed. Dresses hung from a mobile rack, at least 15 of them, ranging from conservative to glamorous. A woman in her 30s stood beside the rack, expertly assessing each garment. Miss Carter, I'm Susan from Bergdorf's. Mrs. Chen said you need something for a city hall wedding. I took the liberty of bringing options. Thank you, but I can't afford... It's covered. Susan pulled 3 dresses from the rack. These would photograph well. Simple, elegant, appropriate for a civil ceremony, but special enough to mark the occasion. What do you think? Lena looked at the dresses. They were beautiful, understated but clearly expensive, the kind of thing she'd never imagined wearing. The cream one, she said, pointing to a knee-length dress with subtle lace details. Excellent choice. Susan moved with practiced efficiency, helping Lena into the dress, adjusting the fit, adding a pair of low heels that somehow matched perfectly. You have good instincts. Now, do you have someone doing your makeup? No? Susan pulled out a makeup kit that could have stocked a small pharmacy. Sit, we have 30 minutes. The transformation was subtle but complete. Susan worked quickly, explaining each step as if teaching rather than just applying. Foundation to even Lena's skin tone. Concealer for the dark circles. Mascara, a touch of blush, neutral lipstick that made her mouth look fuller. When Susan turned her toward the mirror, Lena barely recognized herself. She looked like someone who belonged in this house. Someone who could stand beside Adrian Volkov and not seem like an obvious fraud. Beautiful, Susan said with professional satisfaction. The car is waiting. Lena descended the stairs to find Adrian in the foyer, checking his watch. He wore a different suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, making him look like he'd stepped from a fashion magazine. When he looked up and saw her, something flickered in his pale eyes. Not quite approval, more like confirmation that she'd pass inspection. You look acceptable, he said. You're a romantic, Lena replied before she could stop herself. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. The car is waiting. We're already behind schedule. They rode to City Hall in silence. The driver navigated morning traffic with practiced ease while Lena watched the city pass outside her window. Her city, familiar and strange all at once, as if signing that contract had shifted her into a parallel dimension where everything looked the same but meant something different. At City Hall, they were ushered past waiting areas full of couples clutching flowers and wearing nervous smiles. Adrian's lawyer, Robert, appeared with two strangers who would serve as witnesses. The actual ceremony took less than 10 minutes. A tired clerk read the words. Adrian slipped a ring onto Lena's finger, white gold with a single diamond, elegant and impersonal. She had no ring for him. He didn't seem to expect one. You may kiss the bride, the clerk said with the enthusiasm of someone who'd said it 10,000 times. Adrian leaned in. For one stomach-dropping moment, Lena thought he'd actually kiss her. But he stopped just short, his breath warm against her cheek, maintaining the illusion for their witnesses while honoring the contract between them. Congratulations, the clerk said, handing them a marriage certificate. You're married. And just like that, Lena Carter became Lena Volkov. The hospital visit was brief. Lena signed consent forms while Dr. Morrison explained treatment protocols, side effects, timelines. Adrian waited in the hall, giving her privacy but close enough that his presence was felt, a shadow at the edge of her new reality. Her mother was sleeping, machines beeping their steady rhythm. Lena held her hand, careful of the IV lines. I got the money, she whispered. You're going to be okay. I promised, remember? I promised I'd find a way. Her mother's eyes flickered open, confused, drugged, but present. Lena? I'm here, Mom. Everything's going to be fine. You look different, pretty. Lena glanced down at her cream dress, the ring heavy on her finger. I met someone. We got married today. It took a moment for the words to register. Her mother's grip tightened weakly. Married? Baby, you didn't have to. I wanted to. The lie came easily, smoothly, because it was necessary. His name is Adrian. He's good to me. Her mother searched her face, trying to read truth through the fog of medication. Are you happy? Yes, Lena said, and wondered if she'd be able to keep saying it convincingly for the next year. I'm happy. You just focus on getting better, okay? Let the doctors do their work. Her mother's eyes drifted closed again. My girl, my strong girl. Lena stayed until a nurse gently suggested she let her mother rest. In the hallway, Adrian waited exactly where she'd left him, scrolling through his phone with the distracted focus of someone managing empires. They're starting treatment tonight, Lena said. He nodded, pocketing his phone. Good. We have dinner reservations at 7. Social appearance. Several people I do business with will be present. I don't have anything to wear to... Already handled. Susan left an appropriate dress at the house. Mrs. Chen will help you prepare. Of course. He'd thought of everything. Every detail managed, every variable controlled. They rode back in more silence. Lena watched the city again, thinking about the contract she'd signed. The years stretched ahead of her like a prison sentence. She touched the ring on her finger, smooth, expensive, cold. "Thank you," she said quietly. Adrian glanced at her. "For what?" "My mother, the treatment. I know this is just business for you, but for me it's everything." Something shifted in his expression. Not softness. Adrian Volkov didn't do soft, but maybe acknowledgement. Understanding that while he'd bought a wife, she'd bought a chance at her mother's survival, and those weren't equivalent currencies. "You'll earn it," he said finally. "The contract stipulates your obligations. Meet them, and we'll both get what we need." The rest of the ride passed in silence. That night's dinner was at a restaurant Lena had only seen in magazines, the kind of place where reservations required 3 months and a bloodline. Adrian's hand rested on the small of her back as they walked in, possessive without being intimate, playing the part. The other diners watched. Lena felt their eyes tracking her, calculating, judging. Adrian Volkov had never been seen with a woman before, never dated publicly, and now suddenly he had a wife? Their table was semi-private, positioned to be visible but not accessible. Within minutes, 3 couples approached to offer congratulations. Lena smiled, shook hands, played her role. Adrian introduced her with minimal detail. "My wife, Lena." No backstory, no explanation, just possession, stated as fact. The dinner itself was surreal. Multiple courses of food Lena couldn't pronounce, wine that cost more per bottle than her monthly rent used to. Adrian navigated it all with effortless grace, discussing business and politics with the men at nearby tables, while Lena sat silent, decorative, present, but not participating. Halfway through the meal, a woman approached their table. 50s, elegant in the way only old money achieved, dripping diamonds that caught the light. She smiled at Adrian with the familiarity of long acquaintance. "Adrian, I heard rumors but needed to see for myself. You've actually done it. You've married. Victoria." Adrian's voice carried careful neutrality. "Lena, this is Victoria Ashford. Victoria, my wife." Victoria's eyes swept over Lena with predatory assessment. "Charming. Tell me, dear, how did you manage to catch the uncatchable Adrian Volkov?" The question was polite in words, venomous in tone. Lena felt herself flush, fumbling for an answer that wouldn't sound stupid or desperate or... "She didn't catch me," Adrian said smoothly. "I pursued her, rather persistently, until she agreed to tolerate me permanently." It was a lie wrapped in charm, delivered with just enough smile to make it sound like truth. Victoria's expression flickered, surprise, maybe suspicion, but she recovered quickly. "How romantic. You must tell me all about it sometime, dear. Perhaps lunch?" "Perhaps," Lena managed. Victoria left with a knowing smile that made Lena's skin crawl. When she was gone, Adrian leaned closer, his voice low enough that only Lena could hear. "You'll encounter more of that. Smile, say as little as possible, and defer to me when you're uncomfortable. They're sharks. They smell blood." "What did I do wrong?" "Nothing. You're new. They're testing you." His eyes tracked Victoria's path across the restaurant. "She's been trying to marry me off to her daughter for 5 years. You've made an enemy tonight." "Great. I've been married for 9 hours and already have enemies." That almost smile flickered across Adrian's face again. "Welcome to my world, Mrs. Volkov." The name sounded strange, foreign, like wearing someone else's skin. They left the restaurant near midnight. The car ride home was quiet, both of them exhausted by the performance. When they reached the house, Adrian disappeared into his study without a word. Lena climbed the stairs to her bedroom. Her prison, her sanctuary. She couldn't decide which. Mrs. Chen had turned down the bed and left pajamas laid out. Lena changed mechanically, washed her face, stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. The makeup was gone, revealing the exhaustion beneath. But the ring remained, glinting in the light. She thought about her mother, probably sleeping now, poison pumping through her veins to kill the cancer eating her alive. Thought about the contract, the years stretched ahead. Thought about Adrian's cold eyes and colder words. "I can't have children." Medical condition, at least there were boundaries, walls, a transactional relationship with clear terms. Lena climbed into bed and closed her eyes, willing sleep to come. Tomorrow she'd figure out how to be Mrs. Volkov. Tonight, she was just tired. So incredibly tired. The weeks that followed developed their own rhythm. Lena moved through Adrian's world like a ghost, present but not quite real. During the day, she visited her mother at the hospital, watching the treatment work its brutal magic. Hair loss, weight loss, nausea that made eating impossible, but also small improvements. Blood count stabilizing. The doctor's cautious optimism. At night, she attended functions at Adrian's side. Gallery openings, business dinners. A charity gala where her dress cost more than she used to make in 6 months. She learned to smile on command, to deflect personal questions, to stand beside Adrian and project an image of contentment. They maintained separate bedrooms, separate lives within the same house. Adrian worked constantly, phone calls in Russian and English, meetings that lasted until dawn, trips that took him away for days. When he was home, they were cordial, distant, employer and employee pretending at marriage. Lena tried not to think about how lonely it was. 6 weeks after the wedding, she woke up feeling wrong. Not sick, exactly. Just off. Her body felt foreign, heavy. She stumbled to the bathroom and barely made it before vomiting violently into the toilet. Food poisoning, she thought. Something from last night's dinner. But it happened again the next morning, and the next. By the 4th morning, when she couldn't keep down even water, Lena knew something was seriously wrong. She tried to hide it, not wanting to appear weak or demanding. But during breakfast, which she skipped, claiming she wasn't hungry, Mrs. Chen noticed her pallor. "Miss Lena, you look unwell." "I'm fine, just tired." "You've been tired for days and you're barely eating." "It's nothing, really." But that afternoon, when Lena stood up too quickly and the world tilted violently, she collapsed. Just crumpled like someone had cut her strings. She came to on the floor of her bedroom, Mrs. Chen's worried face hovering above her. "I'm calling Mr. Volkov," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "No, please, I'm fine." "You're not fine, you fainted." Within the hour, Adrian was home. Lena heard his voice in the hallway, sharp with controlled anger. The door opened and he entered, still in his suit, his expression carved from ice. "What happened?" "I just fainted. It's nothing. Low blood sugar, probably." "When did you last eat?" Lena couldn't remember. "A day? 2? Adrian pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Dr. Harrison. He'll examine you here." "That's not necessary." "You collapsed. It's necessary." His tone left no room for argument. "Do not fight me on this." Dr. Harrison arrived within the hour, 60s, professional warmth, carrying a medical bag that looked like it belonged in a museum. He examined Lena while Adrian waited outside, asking questions about her symptoms, her diet, her stress levels. "When was your last period?" "Doctor?" Harrison asked casually. Lena opened her mouth to answer and realized she couldn't remember. With everything happening, the wedding, her mother's treatment, the constant stress, she hadn't been tracking. I'm not sure. 6 weeks? Maybe more?" Dr. Harrison nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to run some blood tests. Standard panels, just to rule things out." He drew blood, promised results within hours, and left. Lena sat in her room feeling foolish and weak. Adrian appeared in the doorway, still wearing his ice mask expression. "The doctor said you haven't been eating properly." "I've been eating fine." "Don't lie to me, Lena. Mrs. Chen says you've skipped most meals this week." "I haven't been hungry. The smell of food makes me nauseous." Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. "How long?" "A few days? A week, maybe." "It's just stress. My body's adjusting to—" She gestured vaguely at the house, at him, at everything her life had become. Stress doesn't make you collapse. They waited in uncomfortable silence. Adrian worked on his laptop while Lena pretended to read on her phone. Neither of them mentioned the tension filling the room like smoke. Dr. Harrison called 3 hours later. Adrian answered, listened, said nothing for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "That's impossible." Lena's heart stuttered. "What? What's impossible?" Adrian's eyes found hers across the room. She'd never seen him look like this, completely, utterly blindsided. His face had gone pale beneath his tan. "Are you certain?" he said into the phone. "Triple checked? No room for error?" A pause. "We'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call. "Adrian, what?" "Dr. Harrison wants to see us both, in person, now." He stood, already moving toward the door. We're leaving immediately. Why? What did he find? Adrian stopped in the doorway, his back to her. When he spoke, his voice was hollow, confused, like someone had just rewritten the laws of physics. He said you're pregnant. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Lena's entire world stopped. That's not possible, she whispered. Adrian turned to face her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw genuine emotion crack through his controlled facade. Not anger, something worse. Fear. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. The drive to Dr. Harrison's private clinic felt like falling through ice, everything crystalline and sharp and impossibly cold. Lena sat rigid in the back seat of the Mercedes, her hands knotted together so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Beside her, Adrian stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Neither of them spoke. What was there to say? The impossible didn't require commentary. Doctor. Harrison's clinic occupied the top floor of a medical building in the financial district, all polished marble and hushed voices, the kind of place where privacy cost extra and discretion was guaranteed. A nurse led them directly to his office, bypassing the waiting room entirely. Adrian's hand found the small of Lena's back as they walked, a gesture that might have looked protective if she couldn't feel the tension radiating through his fingertips. Doctor. Harrison stood once they entered, his professional warmth dimmed by obvious concern. On his desk sat a manila folder thick with test results. Please sit. They sat. The chairs were expensive and uncomfortable. Everything in this room was designed to make difficult conversations slightly more bearable and failing completely. I've run the test 3 times, Dr. Harrison began without preamble. Different labs, different methodologies, the results are consistent. Mrs. Volkov, you're approximately 6 weeks pregnant. The words landed like physical blows. Lena heard them, understood them intellectually, but her brain refused to process them as reality. 6 weeks. That meant, that's impossible, Adrian said again, his voice deadly quiet. You have my medical records, Harrison. You know damn well I'm sterile. The damage was permanent. You said so yourself. Dr. Harrison's expression shifted into something careful, measured. What I said, Adrian, was that your condition made natural conception extremely unlikely. Not impossible. Unlikely. You said the chances were less than 1%. Yes, less than 1%, but not 0. Dr. Harrison opened the folder, pulled out pages covered in numbers and medical jargon. Your motility was severely compromised by the infection you contracted 8 years ago. The scarring, the reduced count, all of that remains true. But bodies are stubborn, complicated things. Sometimes they surprise us. Adrian stood abruptly, the movement sharp enough to make Lena flinch. He walked to the window, his back to both of them, shoulders rigid with barely controlled fury. Run a paternity test. The words cut through the room like broken glass. Lena felt something in her chest compress. Excuse me? A paternity test, Adrian repeated without turning around. Since apparently medical impossibility means nothing anymore. Doctor. Harrison's face creased with disapproval. Adrian, do it. Now. Adrian finally turned and his eyes were winter. I want definitive proof. DNA analysis. Every test available. Lena's hands were shaking. She gripped the arms of her chair to hide it. You think I cheated on you? I think biology doesn't lie, and my biology has been very clear for 8 years that this... He gestured sharply at her stomach. Shouldn't be possible. We have a contract. Lena's voice rose despite her effort to control it. Infidelity voids it. Do you really think I'd risk my mother's treatment for what? An affair with someone I don't even know? I think 6 weeks ago we barely knew each other. I think you had a life before you signed that contract. And I think it's remarkably convenient that you're suddenly pregnant with a child that apparently defies medical science. The accusation hung between them, ugly and raw. Lena stood on shaking legs, her hands curling into fists. You bastard! Prove me wrong. Adrian's face remained carved from ice. Take the test. Show me I'm wrong, and I'll apologize. But until then what? You'll accuse me of being a liar? A cheat? Lena's voice cracked. I haven't been with anyone. Not in months before we met, and certainly not since. But you know what? Fine. Do your test. Run every analysis you want, Because when it comes back showing that this baby is yours, and it will, you're going to feel like the asshole you're being right now. Dr. Harrison cleared his throat. If we're doing this, we should do it properly. Lena, I'll need another blood sample from you. Adrian, you as well. The lab can have preliminary results in 48 hours, full analysis within a week. Do it, Adrian said flatly. The blood draw happened in tense silence. The nurse who performed it moved with practiced efficiency, her face carefully blank as she filled vial after vial. Lena watched her own blood flow into the tubes and thought about how quickly trust could evaporate. 6 weeks of careful civility, of playing their roles, and one impossible positive test had reduced them to this: strangers eyeing each other with suspicion. When it was done, Dr. Harrison walked them to the door. Lena, regardless of the paternity results, you're pregnant. You'll need prenatal care. I'd like to schedule you for an ultrasound and I'll contact you, Adrian interrupted, when we have the test results. Outside, the November cold bit through Lena's coat. She climbed into the Mercedes without waiting for Adrian to open the door, putting as much distance between them as the car's interior allowed. The drive back to the house stretched like taffy, every minute feeling like an hour. Finally, Lena couldn't stand it anymore. I need you to understand something, she said, staring out the window at the passing city. I didn't cheat on you. I haven't been with anyone. And when that test proves it, you don't get to just move on like you didn't accuse me of destroying everything for a quick fuck with a stranger. Adrian's jaw worked. You're asking me to believe in a medical miracle. I'm asking you to believe me. She turned to look at him directly. You bought a wife, Adrian. You made me sign a contract that turned me into property. The least you can do is trust that I understand the terms I agreed to. Something flickered across his face. Doubt, maybe, or the beginning of shame, but his voice remained cold. We'll see what the tests say. The rest of the drive passed in hostile silence. At the house, Lena went straight to her room and locked the door. She stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection, trying to reconcile the impossible truth with her own body. Pregnant. 6 weeks. She pressed her hands against her stomach, feeling nothing different, no sign of the microscopic cluster of cells that had somehow defied odds measured in decimals. Her phone rang. Her mother's number. Lena almost didn't answer. She didn't think she could maintain the lie right now. Couldn't pretend everything was fine when her husband thought she was a cheating liar and her body was staging some kind of biological rebellion. But she answered anyway. Hi, Mom. Lena, sweetheart, I just wanted to hear your voice. The treatment today was rough. The exhaustion in her mother's voice cut through Lena's own crisis. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, forcing brightness into her tone. I'm sorry. Do you need me to come by? No, the nurses are wonderful. I wanted to tell you that Dr. Morrison is pleased with my progress. The blood work is showing improvement. That's great, Mom. That's really great. How are you? How's Adrian? Lena closed her eyes. He's busy, work stuff. But we're fine. Everything's fine. The lies came easier with practice. After the call ended, Lena sat in silence, processing. Her mother was getting better. The treatment was working. Whatever happened with Adrian, whatever the test showed, at least that remained true. At least the bargain she'd made was paying off in the currency that mattered. A soft knock on her door made her jump. Mrs. Volkov? Mrs. Chen's voice, careful and concerned. I've brought you some tea and crackers. Dr. Harrison called with dietary recommendations for the morning sickness. Lena opened the door. Mrs. Chen stood with a tray, her expression kind in a way that made Lena want to cry. Thank you. I also brought ginger supplements. They can help with the nausea. And I've adjusted your meal schedule, smaller portions, more frequently throughout the day. Mrs. Chen set the tray on the bedside table. If you need anything at all, please tell me. After she left, Lena sat with the tea and thought about the strange kindness of strangers. Mrs. Chen had no reason to care beyond professional obligation, yet here she was, researching remedies and adjusting schedules for a girl playing dress-up as mistress of the house. The next 48 hours crawled past like wounded animals. Lena and Adrian existed in the same house but different universes, their paths crossing only at necessary functions. A business dinner where they smiled for cameras and spoke in careful platitudes. A brief encounter in the hallway where they passed without speaking, the air between them charged with unspoken accusations. Lena spent her days at the hospital with her mother and her nights in her room, researching pregnancy on her phone. The information overwhelmed her. Weeks of development, risk factors, symptoms, an entire roadmap of transformation her body would undergo whether she was ready or not. She wasn't ready. On the afternoon of the second day, Dr. Harrison called. Adrian was in his study. Lena was in the library pretending to read. They both converged on Adrian's office at the same moment, drawn by the same magnetic pull of answers. Adrian put the call on speaker. "I have the results, doctor," Harrison said without preamble. "Preliminary analysis is conclusive. Adrian, you are the biological father. The full panel confirms it with 99.9% certainty." Silence crashed through the room like a wave. "That's not possible," Adrian said, but his voice had lost its edge. He sounded lost. "It's improbable," Dr. Harrison corrected gently, "but clearly not impossible. Your condition made natural conception extremely unlikely, but as I said, bodies surprise us. The pregnancy is real, and the child is genetically yours." Lena felt something in her chest unclench. Vindication mixed with terror. She'd been telling the truth, but that truth came with impossible implications she wasn't ready to face. "How?" Adrian's question was barely audible. "How did this happen?" A pause. "Do you recall the night of your wedding? You mentioned to me once that you'd had significant alcohol that evening. Intoxication can temporarily improve motility in some cases. Combined with timing, stress hormones, simple chance," Dr. Harrison's voice carried professional delicacy. "These things align rarely, but they do align." The wedding night. Lena's mind struggled to piece together memories that had been blurred by champagne and exhaustion and terror. They'd come back to the house. She'd been crying, overwhelmed by everything she'd agreed to, the weight of the contract, the unreality of marrying a stranger. Adrian had found her in the hallway outside her room. "You're safe here. I know this isn't what you wanted, but you're safe." His voice had been different that night, softer, almost kind. She'd been shaking. He'd steadied her, and then the memory surfaced in fragments, his hands on her shoulders, her reaching up, seeking comfort in the only other person in that massive empty house. The kiss that had started as gratitude and shifted into something desperate. Neither of them thinking clearly, both of them drunk on alcohol and adrenaline, and the strange intimacy of two people who just legally bound themselves together. She remembered stumbling into her room, him following. The rest was a blur of heat and confusion, and mourning regret so sharp they'd both pretended it never happened. They'd never spoken of it, not once in 6 weeks, as if mutual silence could erase what they'd done. "I need to examine Lena properly," Dr. Harrison was saying. "Schedule her for a full workup. She'll need prenatal vitamins, ultrasounds, monitoring. I'll call you back." Adrian ended the call abruptly. The silence in the study felt thick enough to drown in. Lena stood frozen, unable to look at Adrian, unable to process the confirmation that the impossible had happened, and they were both complicit in it. "I'm sorry," Adrian said finally. Lena's head snapped up. He was looking at her now, really looking at her, and the ice had cracked. What showed through wasn't warmth exactly, but it wasn't contempt either. "I accused you of something terrible. I was wrong. I apologize." "You thought," Lena's voice cracked, "you really thought I would risk everything for—" "I thought biology was absolute. I thought I knew the limits of what was possible." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so uncharacteristically uncertain it made him look almost human. "I was wrong about that too. We never talked about it." The words came out smaller than she intended. "That night, we both just pretended." "I know." Adrian's expression shuddered again, control reasserting itself. "It was a mistake. We were both impaired. Neither of us was thinking clearly." "A mistake," Lena repeated. The word felt inadequate for something that had resulted in a whole new life. "That's one way to put it." "What would you call it?" She didn't have an answer. What did you call drunken intimacy between two strangers playing at marriage? What category existed for that? "It doesn't matter what we call it," Adrian said when she didn't respond. "What matters is dealing with the consequences. You're pregnant. With my child. That changes the terms of our arrangement." Lena felt her spine straighten. "The contract says—" "I know what the contract says, but a child complicates things significantly. We need to discuss how to proceed." "How to proceed?" Lena's hands moved to her stomach instinctively. "What does that mean?" Adrian's eyes followed the movement. It means we have options, choices to make. This doesn't have to... He paused, choosing words carefully. Derail either of our plans. The implication hit her like cold water. You're suggesting I terminate the pregnancy. I'm suggesting we discuss all available options rationally, without emotion clouding our judgment. This is a baby, Adrian, not a business problem you can solve with the right strategy. Everything is a business problem with the right framing. But his voice lacked conviction. He looked away, jaw working. You didn't sign up for this. Neither did I. A child wasn't part of our agreement. You have every right to... No. The word came out sharper than she intended. Lena stood, meeting his eyes directly. I'm not having this conversation. Not now, maybe not ever. I need to think. She left before he could respond, climbing the stairs to her room on legs that felt like water. Inside, she locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Pregnant. The word kept echoing in her head, impossible and undeniable all at once. She'd come into this marriage expecting nothing but a transaction, money for time, security for her mother in exchange for a year of her life. And now her body had betrayed that simple equation, creating something neither of them had planned for. She thought about Adrian's careful words, options, choices. The clinical distance he'd maintained even while suggesting she could end this pregnancy like one might cancel a subscription. But underneath his ice, she'd seen something else. Fear, maybe. Or confusion. For a man who controlled everything, who managed his life down to the smallest detail, an unplanned child must feel like chaos incarnate. Lena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Victoria Ashford. I heard through mutual friends that congratulations are in order. How fortunate that you conceived so quickly after your wedding. Some might even say suspiciously quickly. Let's have lunch, I insist. The message sat on her screen like a threat. Lena stared at it, understanding crystallizing. The news was already spreading. Somehow, people knew. And they were doing math, counting weeks, raising eyebrows at the timeline. She deleted the message without responding. That evening, Adrian appeared at her door. He'd changed from his suit into dark jeans and a sweater, the most casual she'd ever seen him. It made him look younger, less like a crime boss and more like someone who might be capable of normal human uncertainty. We should talk, he said. I thought we did that already. Not about options, about reality. He hesitated at the threshold. May I come in? Lena stepped aside. Adrian entered her room for the first time since that blurred wedding night, looking around with the careful attention of someone cataloging details. He noted the stack of pregnancy books she'd downloaded to her tablet, the bottle of ginger supplements on the nightstand, the way her hand kept drifting to her stomach. I spoke with Dr. Harrison again, he said. He's arranged for a full prenatal workup next week. Ultrasound, blood panels, genetic screening, whatever you need. Whatever the baby needs, Lena corrected. Yes. Adrian's throat worked. Whatever the baby needs. They stood in uncomfortable silence. Two people who'd accidentally created a life together and had no idea how to navigate the aftermath. People are going to talk, Adrian said finally. The timeline is tight. 6 weeks pregnant means conception right around our wedding. Some will find that romantic. Others will be suspicious. Like Victoria Ashford. His eyes sharpened. She contacted you? Texted. Wanted to have lunch and discuss how fortunate my conception timing was. Don't respond, don't engage. Victoria thrives on gossip and innuendo. The less you give her, the better. What do we tell people? About the baby? Adrian moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. The truth, edited. We got married, we're having a child. The rest is no one's business. And after. The contract says 1 year. But if there's a baby, the contract becomes void the moment the child is born. His voice was matter of fact. No divorce, no separation. A child links us permanently, whether we want it or not. The weight of that reality settled over Lena like snow. She'd signed up for 1 year. Temporary servitude with a clear end date. Now that timeline had evaporated, replaced by something far more permanent and terrifying. So I'm stuck, she said quietly, bound to you forever because of one drunken mistake. Adrian turned from the window. You're not stuck. We'll figure out custody arrangements, financial support. I'll ensure you and the child want for nothing, but we don't have to pretend at marriage indefinitely. Just until the baby is born? Or longer, if you prefer. Whatever works best for the child. The child. Always the child now, not them, not the marriage, not the impossible tangle they'd created. Everything reframed through the lens of parental responsibility. Lena sat on the edge of her bed, exhaustion crashing over her. I don't know how to do this. Any of this. I'm 23. I work at a convenience store. Worked, I guess. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know how to be a father. Adrian's admission came quiet, almost vulnerable. I never planned for this. Never wanted it. Children weren't part of my future. Why not? He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. My world is dangerous. The business I'm in, the enemies I've made, bringing a child into that felt cruel. I had the medical excuse. I told myself it was better this way, safer for everyone. And now? Now I don't have that excuse. He met her eyes. Now I have a choice. Walk away and let you raise this child alone, well-funded but absent. Or stay and try to be something I have no idea how to be. What do you want? Lena asked. Adrian's laugh was bitter. What I want stopped being relevant the moment you took that pregnancy test. Now it's about what's right, what's best for a child who didn't ask to be born into this mess. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the knob. Get some rest. Dr. Harrison wants to see you early next week. We'll take this one step at a time. After he left, Lena lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her hands on her stomach. Somewhere inside her, cells were dividing, multiplying, becoming something that would eventually be a person who would need her to be more than she'd ever been. She thought about Adrian's words, one step at a time. It seemed impossible that something as monumental as a child could be approached incrementally, but maybe that was the only way to face the impossible, break it into pieces small enough to manage. The ultrasound appointment came on a cold Tuesday. Lena dressed in comfortable clothes, her stomach still flat but tender. Adrian met her in the foyer, wearing his armor of expensive suits and controlled expression. The clinic was quiet, exclusive, designed for people who valued privacy above all else. They were ushered into an examination room where soft music played and the lighting was deliberately calming. The ultrasound technician introduced herself as Maya, young, kind-faced, clearly briefed on handling high-profile patients. She had Lena lie back on the examination table and adjusted the equipment. This might be cold, Maya warned, squeezing gel onto Lena's exposed stomach. The first touch of the transducer made Lena flinch. Adrian stood against the wall, watching with an expression she couldn't read. The monitor showed nothing but static and shadows. Maya moved the wand carefully, searching. The seconds stretched. Lena's heart began to hammer. Was something wrong? Had she imagined the whole thing? Then Maya smiled. There we are. The image on the screen shifted. In the center, barely visible, was a tiny flicker of movement. That's the heartbeat, Maya said softly. Strong and steady, measuring at about 6 weeks, 4 days, right on track. Lena stared at the screen, unable to process what she was seeing. It didn't look like a baby. It looked like a being, a blob with a flickering pulse. But that pulse was unmistakable, rapid and determined. Can we hear it? Adrian's voice came from somewhere far away. Maya adjusted a setting. Suddenly the room filled with sound, whoosh, 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 fast and rhythmic, like a tiny drum echoing through water. The heartbeat. Lena watched Adrian's face as he listened. The ice cracked completely. For just a moment, she saw genuine awe break through his control. He stepped closer to the screen, eyes fixed on that impossible flutter. Everything looks good, Maya was saying, printing images. Development is normal. Due date is approximately early July. Do you want copies of the ultrasound? Yes, Adrian said before Lena could respond. Maya printed several images and handed them over. Lena stared at the grainy black and white photo. Her baby. Their baby. Real and undeniable. In the car afterward, they rode in silence. Adrian held one of the ultrasound images, studying it like it contained secrets worth decoding. It's real, he said finally. Yes. I heard the heartbeat, and I still can barely believe it. Lena understood. The abstract concept of pregnancy was one thing, the visual proof, the sound of that rapid pulse, that made it concrete in a way test results couldn't. What do we do now? She asked. Adrian folded the ultrasound image carefully, tucked it into his jacket pocket. We prepare. You'll need proper prenatal care, nutrition, rest. The nursery will need to be set up. We'll need staff trained in childcare. Always practical, always managing. But Lena heard something beneath the logistics. Uncertainty. Fear wrapped in efficiency. Adrian? Yes? Thank you for coming today, for... She gestured vaguely. Being here. His eyes found hers. Where else would I be? It wasn't a declaration of devotion. It wasn't romance or promises of forever. But it was something. Acknowledgement that they were in this together, whether they'd planned it or not. The next weeks passed in careful routine. Lena's morning sickness intensified, forcing her to cancel several social obligations. Adrian hired a private chef who specialized in pregnancy nutrition. Mrs. Chen stocked the kitchen with foods that might stay down: crackers, ginger ale, bland proteins. Lena spent her days researching, reading, trying to prepare for something that felt entirely unpreparable. She visited her mother less frequently, not wanting to explain why she looked exhausted and could barely keep food down. The lie grew heavier. One evening, she found Adrian in his study, paperwork spread across his desk. He looked up when she entered, eyebrows raised in question. "I need to tell my mother," Lena said without preamble, "about the baby. She's getting stronger, the treatment is working, and she's starting to ask why I haven't visited as much." Adrian set down his pen. "What will you tell her?" "The truth. That I'm pregnant, that you're the father." Lena met his eyes. "I won't tell her about the contract, about how this marriage started, but I can't keep lying about the baby." "All right. That's it? Just all right? You want my permission to tell your mother she's going to be a grandmother?" Adrian's mouth quirked slightly. "You don't need it. Tell her whatever you think is best." The next day, Lena visited the hospital with the ultrasound image in her purse. Her mother was sitting up, looking better than she had in months. The hair loss was complete now, but her color had improved, and she could hold conversations without exhausting herself. "Lena!" Her face lit up. "I was hoping you'd come today. Dr. Morrison says my counts are almost normal. Can you believe it?" "That's wonderful, Mom." Lena sat in the visitor's chair, nervous energy making her fidget. Her mother noticed immediately. "What's wrong? Is everything okay with Adrian?" "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. I have news." Lena pulled out the ultrasound image, handed it over with shaking hands. "You're going to be a grandmother." Her mother stared at the image, confusion shifting to recognition, to pure joy. "Oh my God. Oh, Lena, really?" "Really. About 8 weeks along now, due in July." 8 weeks? Her mother did the math, eyes widening. "Right after the wedding?" "Pretty much." Lena felt her face heat. "It wasn't planned. We weren't trying. It just happened." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "My baby is having a baby. I never thought I'd see this day. The treatment, being sick, I thought I might not." "Don't." Lena took her hand. "You're getting better. You're going to be around to meet your grandchild. That's what matters." They cried together, relief and joy, and the overwhelming weight of second chances. Later, when her mother had calmed down, she studied Lena with the keen insight of someone who'd known her for 23 years. "Are you happy?" she asked quietly. "Really happy?" Lena thought about the question. Was she happy? Her marriage was a business arrangement. Her pregnancy was an accident. Her life had been completely upended in ways she was still processing. But her mother was alive, getting better, and despite everything, despite the impossibility and the fear, there was a tiny heartbeat growing inside her that belonged to her. "I'm figuring it out," she said honestly. "It's complicated, but I'm okay. We're okay." "Does Adrian treat you well?" "He does. He's trying. Neither of us expected this, but he's stepping up." Her mother nodded, satisfied for now. They spent the rest of the visit talking about baby names and nursery colors, and all the normal things expectant mothers discussed. When Lena left, she felt lighter. The secret had been halved, the burden shared. At home, she found Adrian in the library, reading. He looked up when she entered. "How did it go?" "Good. She's excited. Cried happy tears, asked if you treat me well." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you're trying." Lena sat across from him. She wants to meet you properly. Once she's stronger, have dinner, talk, get to know her son-in-law. Something crossed Adrian's face. Discomfort, maybe. Of course. When she's ready. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Outside, rain began to fall, drumming against the windows. I've been thinking, Adrian said finally, about what comes next. After the baby is born, Lena's stomach tightened. And I think we should consider making this real. The marriage, not just for appearances. The words hung between them, impossible and terrifying in their implications. Why? Lena managed. Adrian set down his book, met her eyes directly. Because a child deserves stability. Parents who are present, committed, together. I can't offer you romance or love or any of the things a real marriage should have, but I can offer you partnership, security, a shared commitment to raising this child properly. You're proposing we stay married, really married. I'm proposing we try. For the child's sake. Lena studied his face, looking for deception or manipulation. But all she saw was careful sincerity. This was Adrian trying, in the only way he knew how. I need to think about it, she said. Take all the time you need. He picked up his book again, the conversation apparently concluded in his mind. But as Lena climbed the stairs to her room, her hand on her stomach, she wondered if thinking would help at all. The future had become something wild and unpredictable, resistant to planning or logic. All she could do was take it one day at a time, one heartbeat at a time, and hope that somehow, impossibly, everything would work out. The decision came not in a moment of clarity, but in the accumulation of small truths. Lena watched Adrian over the following days. The way he'd started keeping prenatal vitamins on the breakfast table without comment, how he'd rearranged his schedule to attend every doctor's appointment, the ultrasound image she'd caught him studying late one night when he thought no one was watching. He was trying. In his careful, controlled way, he was trying to be what this situation demanded. On a gray afternoon 2 weeks after his proposal, Lena found him in his study and said simply, "Okay." He looked up from his laptop, confusion flickering across his features. "Okay? We'll try. Making this real. For the baby." She kept her voice steady, even as her heart hammered. "But I need you to understand something. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not expecting some fairy tale transformation where we suddenly become a perfect couple. But if we're doing this, if we're really staying married, then we do it as partners. Equals. Not owner and possession." Adrian stood, moved around the desk to face her directly. "Agreed. Equal partners. I'll have Robert draft an addendum to the prenuptial agreement. Everything split 50-50. Full access to accounts. Joint decisions on matters concerning the child. And separate bedrooms," Lena added, unless we both decide otherwise." Something flickered in his eyes. Relief, maybe, or disappointment carefully masked. "Separate bedrooms. Whatever makes you comfortable." They shook hands like business associates sealing a deal, the gesture formal and slightly absurd given the intimacy of what they were agreeing to. But it felt right somehow, honest. Two people entering a partnership with clear terms and realistic expectations. That night, Lena lay in bed and tried to imagine what their future looked like. A marriage that was real but not romantic. A child raised by parents who respected each other but didn't love each other. It wasn't what she dreamed of as a girl, but then again, very little in her life had matched those childhood fantasies. The next morning brought news that shattered their fragile equilibrium. Adrian's phone rang during breakfast. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and answered with a curt, "What is it?" Lena watched his expression shift from annoyance to cold fury in the span of seconds. He stood abruptly, walking to the window as he listened to whoever was on the other end. "When?" A pause. "How many?" Another pause. Longer. "No. No police. Handle it internally. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call and stood perfectly still, his shoulders rigid with barely controlled rage. "What's wrong?" Lena asked. "There was an incident at one of my warehouses. Someone tried to break in last night. Security stopped them, but..." He turned to face her, and she saw something new in his eyes. Fear. They weren't trying to steal anything. They were planting surveillance equipment. Who would... Enemies. Rivals. Take your pick. Adrian's jaw clenched. The timing is suspicious. The pregnancy announcement made the papers yesterday. Suddenly, people are very interested in my business affairs. Lena's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. You think someone is targeting us because of the baby? I think a child makes me vulnerable in ways I haven't been before. And my enemies are pragmatic enough to recognize that. He pulled out his phone again, typing rapidly. I'm increasing security. No more solo hospital visits for you. Victor will drive you everywhere and Marcus will accompany you inside. Adrian, that's excessive. It's necessary. His voice cut through her protest like a blade. You're carrying my child. That makes you a target. I won't apologize for keeping you safe. The word target landed like a physical blow. Lena had known intellectually that Adrian's world was dangerous. She'd signed the contract understanding that marrying him meant entering a life shadowed by threat. But knowing and experiencing were vastly different things. What do I tell people when I show up places with bodyguards? Tell them the truth, that as my wife you require security. No one will question it. Adrian was already moving toward the door, grabbing his coat. I need to handle this situation. Stay in the house today. Don't go anywhere without telling Mrs. Chen first. He left before she could argue, the front door closing with a decisive click that sounded like a prison gate locking. Lena sat alone in the breakfast room, her appetite gone. The house suddenly felt different, not a sanctuary, but a fortress. And she was something precious that needed guarding, kept safe behind walls and watched by men with guns. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. Miss Lena, would you like me to clear the table? No, Lena looked at the older woman, really looked at her for the first time. Mrs. Chen, how long have you worked for Adrian? 12 years, miss. Has it always been like this? The security? The threats? Mrs. Chen's expression softened with something like sympathy. Mr. Volkov's business has always attracted attention. Not all of it friendly, but he's careful, cautious, and very good at protecting what's his. What's his? The phrase settled over Lena like a shroud. She was what was his now, her and the baby both. The day dragged past in anxious waiting. Lena tried to distract herself with pregnancy books and mindless television, but her thoughts kept circling back to Adrian's words. Enemies, targets, surveillance equipment. What had she brought her child into? Adrian returned late that evening, his suit jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked exhausted in a way Lena hadn't seen before. Not physically tired, but mentally drained, as if he'd spent hours making impossible decisions. Is everything okay? She asked. It's handled. The people responsible have been dealt with. The warehouse is secure. He poured himself a drink, scotch, neat, and downed it in one swallow. But this is just the beginning. Word is out about the pregnancy. Every rival I have is reassessing their strategy, looking for weaknesses. And I'm the weakness. You're the complication. He poured another drink but didn't consume it, just stared into the amber liquid. I built my life to be impenetrable. No attachments, no soft spots, nothing for enemies to leverage against me. And now you have a wife and a baby on the way, Lena finished quietly. Yes. The admission sounded like defeat. Lena stood, moved closer to where he leaned against the bar. So what do we do? Hide forever? Live in fear? We adapt, get smarter, make you less vulnerable. Adrian finally looked at her, and his eyes held a determination that was almost frightening in its intensity. I'm going to teach you how to protect yourself. Basic self-defense, situational awareness, how to recognize threats. If something happens, if somehow security fails, I need to know you can handle yourself. I'm pregnant, Adrian. I can't exactly take martial arts classes. Modified training, safe for pregnancy. Dr. Harrison can recommend someone. He set down his untouched drink. I know this isn't what you signed up for. The contract didn't include being a target for my enemies. If you want to leave, if you want to take the money and disappear somewhere safe, and go where? Lena interrupted. I'm having your child. You just explained that makes me a target whether I'm here or not. At least here I have you. Security, protection. She took a breath. We agreed to be partners. That means facing the dangerous parts together. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Not quite gratitude, but close. Respect, maybe. Recognition that she wasn't running when given the chance. All right then, partners. He offered his hand. Lena took it. His grip was warm, solid, anchoring. For a moment they stood there, connected by more than contracts, or accidental pregnancies, connected by a shared understanding that they were in this together, for better or worse. The training started the following week. A woman named Kira came to the house 3 times a week, compact, muscular, with the watchful eyes of someone who'd seen violence up close. She taught Lena modified self-defense techniques that wouldn't endanger the pregnancy. How to break a grip, where to strike to incapacitate an attacker, how to be aware of her surroundings, to notice patterns and anomalies. You're not trying to win a fight, Kira explained during their 3rd session. You're trying to create an opportunity to escape. Hit hard, hit fast, and run. Lena practiced the movements until they became muscle memory. Palm strikes to the nose, knee to the groin, elbow to the solar plexus. Simple, brutal, effective. Adrian sometimes watched these sessions from the doorway, his expression unreadable. Lena caught him once, asked what he was thinking. That I hate the necessity of this, he said quietly. That you shouldn't have to learn how to hurt people just to stay safe. But it's the reality of your world. Our world, he corrected. Now. As December arrived and Lena entered her 2nd trimester, the pregnancy became impossible to hide. Her body changed in subtle ways. Her waist thickening, her breasts becoming fuller, a new heaviness to her movements. She started wearing looser clothing, but the staff noticed. The security team noticed. And soon, everyone noticed. The social obligations intensified. Adrian needed to show his pregnant wife to the world, to demonstrate that his new vulnerability came with its own kind of strength. They attended galas and dinners, charity events, and business functions. Lena played her part, smiling for cameras, deflecting personal questions, standing beside Adrian with practiced ease. But the whispers followed them everywhere, speculation about the timeline, questions about how someone like Lena had captured the uncapturable Adrian Volkov, suggestions that perhaps the pregnancy had prompted the marriage rather than followed it. Victoria Ashford cornered Lena at a Christmas fundraiser, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. You're glowing, dear, positively radiant. Her eyes dropped to Lena's stomach with calculated precision. How far along are you now? 3 months? About that, Lena said carefully. Fascinating. And you married in November. Early November, if I recall correctly. The implication hung between them like poison. Lena felt her face heat, but forced herself to meet Victoria's gaze steadily. Is there something you'd like to ask me directly, Mrs. Ashford? Victoria's smile widened. Not at all, dear. I'm simply happy for you both. Such fortunate timing. After she glided away, Adrian appeared at Lena's elbow. What did she say? The usual passive-aggressive nonsense, implying I was pregnant before we married. Let her imply. She has no proof, and even if she did, it changes nothing. We're married. You're pregnant. The rest is noise. But the noise was getting louder. Lena felt it in the stares, the whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. The city's elite had made their judgment, and it wasn't favorable. One evening, after another exhausting function, Lena stood in her bathroom scrubbing off makeup and fighting back tears of frustration. A soft knock on the door made her pause. Lena? May I come in? Adrian's voice, uncertain in a way she rarely heard. It's your house. He entered, still in his tuxedo but with the bow tie undone, making him look disheveled and oddly vulnerable. He took in her red-rimmed eyes, the barely suppressed distress in her posture. What Victoria said tonight, I don't care what Victoria said. Lena's voice cracked despite her effort to control it. I care that everyone believes it, that they all think I trapped you, that I got pregnant on purpose to secure a rich husband. Their opinions don't matter. They matter to me. The words burst out, raw and honest. I know this marriage started as a transaction. I know we're only together because I needed money, and you needed a wife. But I didn't trap you. I didn't plan this baby, and I'm tired of being looked at like I'm some kind of scheming gold digger. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, his hands gentle as he turned her to face him. Listen to me. I don't care what they think. I know the truth. You're not a gold digger. You're a woman who made an impossible choice to save her mother's life. You're carrying a child neither of us planned, but both of us are committed to. And you're handling my world with more grace than most people born into it ever manage. His eyes held hers with unexpected intensity. You are not less than them. You're better. Remember that. The sincerity in his voice broke something loose in Lena's chest. Tears spilled over, and before she could think better of it, she leaned into him. Adrian's arms came around her carefully, as if she might shatter. They stood like that for a long moment, her tears soaking into his expensive shirt, while he held her with unexpected tenderness. "I'm sorry," she mumbled into his chest. "Pregnancy hormones. I'm a mess." "You're human. It's allowed." When she finally pulled back, his shirt was ruined and her face was blotchy, but something had shifted between them. Some wall had cracked, letting in light. The next crisis came 3 days before Christmas. Lena was at the hospital visiting her mother, who was now in remission and planning her discharge in January, when Victor, her bodyguard, got a phone call. His expression changed instantly, going from relaxed watchfulness to sharp alert. "We need to leave. Now." "What? Why?" "Security threat. Mr. Volkov's orders. We're taking you to a safe house." "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening." Victor's jaw clenched. "There's been a credible threat against you specifically. Someone claiming they'll hurt you to get to Mr. Volkov. We can't take chances." Lena's blood went cold. "My mother already has security posted outside her room. She's safe. You need to come with me." The drive to the safe house was tense and silent. They headed out of the city into the hills, finally turning onto a private road that led to a modern house made of glass and steel, tucked into the forest like a secret. Adrian was already there, pacing the living room with his phone pressed to his ear. When he saw Lana, relief flooded his features. "She's here," he said into the phone. "Yes. Keep me updated." He ended the call and crossed to her in 3 long strides. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Victor got me out before anything happened." "What's going on?" "A rival organization trying to send a message. They made threats, posted them publicly in places designed to get my attention." "Ish." His hands moved to her shoulders, grounding. "You're safe here. This property is off the books, untraceable. We'll stay until the situation is resolved." "How long will that take?" "However long it takes." His voice was steel. "I'm not risking you or the baby." The safe house was comfortable but sterile, furnished with expensive pieces that no one had ever lived with. They had clothes brought in, food delivered by trusted staff. For 3 days they existed in strange isolation, cut off from the city and the life they'd been building. On the second night, unable to sleep, Lena found Adrian on the deck overlooking the forest. Snow had started to fall, dusting the trees with white. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Too much on my mind." He glanced at her, then back at the falling snow. "I keep thinking about what kind of father I'll be, whether I can keep you safe, whether bringing a child into my world is fundamentally selfish." Lena moved to stand beside him, the cold biting through her sweater. "You're already being a good father. You dropped everything to keep us safe. You're here instead of out there handling the threat personally." "I wanted to handle it personally. Marcus had to physically restrain me from going after the people who threatened you." His hands gripped the railing hard enough to whiten his knuckles. "I wanted to hurt them, make them understand that you're untouchable. But you didn't. You stayed here. With me. Because you needed me here more than I needed revenge." He finally looked at her fully. "That's new for me. Choosing restraint over retaliation. I don't know if I like it. It's called growth. Being a parent means making choices you don't like because they're right." Adrian's laugh was short and bitter. "I'm going to fail at this spectacularly, aren't I?" "Probably, so will I. Most parents do. A little bit." Lena touched his arm gently. "But we'll fail together. That counts for something." He covered her hand with his, the gesture simple and grounding. They stood like that, watching snow fall through silence, 2 people learning to be partners in a situation neither had chosen. On the 3rd day, Marcus called with news. The threat had been neutralized. The people responsible were no longer a problem, and Adrian's message about the consequences of targeting his family had been received loud and clear across the city's underworld. They returned to the house on Christmas Eve to find Mrs. Chen had decorated despite the crisis. A tree in the living room, lights strung through the halls, the whole place transformed into something warm and festive. "I thought you might want some normalcy," she said when Lena thanked her. "Something to mark the holiday, especially with the baby coming." That night, Lena and Adrian sat in the living room with the tree lights glowing and talked about nothing important. Her mother's discharge plans, nursery colors, whether they should find out the baby's sex or wait. Normal couple things, domestic and simple. At some point, Adrian handed her a wrapped box. "What's this?" "Christmas present. Open it." Inside was a leather journal, expensive and beautiful. Lena ran her fingers over the smooth cover, confused. "For documenting the pregnancy," Adrian explained. "Thoughts, feelings, milestones. Something the child can read someday, to understand where they came from." The thoughtfulness of it hit Lena hard. This wasn't a transaction. This was a man trying to give their child a history, a narrative beyond the complicated truth of their beginning. "Thank you," she said, and meant it completely. "I have something for you, too." She pulled out a small wrapped package she'd hidden in the couch cushions earlier. Adrian opened it carefully. Inside was a framed copy of their first ultrasound image, the one showing that tiny flickering heartbeat. "So you don't have to keep the folded one in your jacket pocket," Lena said quietly. "I know you look at it. I've seen you." Adrian stared at the frame, his throat working. When he looked up, his eyes held an emotion she couldn't quite name. Vulnerability, maybe, or the beginning of something deeper. "I do look at it," he admitted, "when I need to remember why all of this matters. Why I'm trying to be something different than what I was." They sat together in the glow of Christmas lights, the distance between them somehow smaller than it had been. Not love, not yet, maybe not ever, but something real, something worth protecting. The next morning, Lena woke to find a note slipped under her door. "Equal partners means you should know what you're partnered with. Ask me anything you want to know about my business. No more secrets." She found him in his study, already working despite the early hour. "I saw your note," she said. He looked up, wariness in his eyes. "And?" "Tell me about your business, the real version. No sanitized corporate speak." Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her face as if checking her commitment to this conversation. Then he began to talk. He told her about the legitimate holdings, real estate, shipping, several casinos. And then he told her about the rest. The gray areas, the cash businesses that existed in legal twilight, the connections to people who operated entirely outside the law. "I don't deal in drugs or trafficking," he said carefully. "Those are lines I won't cross. But gambling, protection, certain kinds of facilitation, yes, I'm involved in all of that. And the money I make from it gets laundered through the legitimate businesses until it's clean." "So you're a criminal?" "By legal definition, yes. By my own ethics, it's more complicated. I operate in spaces where the law is either absent or corrupt. I provide services people want, and I do it more ethically than most." He met her eyes directly. "But I won't pretend I'm something I'm not. If that changes how you see me, I understand." Lena processed this information, trying to reconcile it with the man who'd held her while she cried, who'd bought her a journal to document their baby's story. "Does it ever bother you, the moral ambiguity?" "Every day. But I grew up in a world where moral clarity was a luxury. You survived by being practical, by taking opportunities others wouldn't. By the time I had the luxury of ethics, I was already too deep to walk away cleanly. Could you walk away now, if you wanted to?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "I could liquidate the illegal operations, focus entirely on the legitimate businesses. It would take time, careful planning, making sure I don't leave power vacuums that get filled by worse people than me. But yes, it's possible." "Is it something you want?" "I want my child to grow up without the fear we just lived through, without threats and safe houses and learning self-defense at 5 years old." He stood, moved to the window. "I want to be someone they can be proud of, someone whose business can be discussed at dinner without euphemisms." "Then maybe that's what we work toward," Lena said. "Not overnight, but gradually, building something different." Adrian turned to look at her, and in his eyes she saw hope mixed with doubt. "You'd help me do that? We're partners, remember? That means I help you become who you want to be, and you help me do the same." He crossed to where she stood, took her hands in his. "Thank you for not running, for staying even after knowing the truth." "Where would I run to?" Lena asked softly. "You're the father of my child. For better or worse, we're in this together." "For better or worse," Adrian echoed. They stood like that, hands clasped, the winter sun streaming through the windows. Outside, the city spread below them, full of threats and possibilities in equal measure. But inside this room, they had each other. It wasn't romance, it wasn't the fairy tale, but it was real, and it was theirs. And somehow, that was enough. The new year arrived with bitter cold and unexpected changes. Lena's mother was discharged from the hospital in early January, her remission holding steady, her strength returning in increments. Adrian arranged for her to stay in a guest house on the property, close enough for daily visits, but separate enough to give everyone privacy. Patricia Carter's first real meeting with her son-in-law happened over dinner on a Friday night. Lena watched nervously as her mother studied Adrian with the sharp assessment of someone who'd spent 23 years protecting her daughter from the world's cruelties. "So you're the man who swept my daughter off her feet," Patricia said, her tone deliberately neutral. Adrian met her gaze without flinching. "I'm the man who married her, yes." "Lena tells me you've been good to her, that you're committed to this child." "I am, completely." "Why?" Patricia's directness cut through the polite dinner conversation like a knife. "You're wealthy, powerful, could have any woman you wanted. Why my daughter? Why marry someone you barely knew?" The question hung in the air. Lena held her breath, wondering how Adrian would navigate this without revealing the transactional nature of their beginning. "Because she was exactly what I needed," Adrian said finally, and the truth in his voice made Lena's chest tighten. "Not someone who wanted me for my money or connections. Not someone who saw me as a prize to win, just someone honest, trying to survive impossible circumstances. I respected that. Still do." Patricia studied him for another long moment, then nodded slowly. "My daughter is the strongest person I know. She gave up everything to save my life. I hope you understand the magnitude of that sacrifice." "I do," Adrian said quietly. "And I'm trying to be worthy of it." The tension eased after that. They talked about the pregnancy, the nursery plans, Patricia's recovery. By the end of the evening, Lena could see her mother's protective walls beginning to lower. Not completely, but enough. Later, as Adrian walked Lena back to the main house, she touched his arm. "Thank you for what you said to her." "I meant it. All of it. I know." That's what made it matter. As January progressed, Lena's pregnancy became increasingly visible. At 17 weeks, her stomach had rounded into an undeniable bump that no amount of careful dressing could hide. She felt the baby move for the first time during a quiet afternoon, a flutter like butterfly wings against her ribs. She'd been so startled she'd gasped aloud. Adrian had been in the room, working on his laptop. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. The baby moved. I felt it." He'd crossed the room in seconds, his hand hovering uncertainly near her stomach. May I feel?" Lena had taken his hand, pressed it against where she'd felt the movement. They'd waited in breathless silence, but the baby had gone still, shy or sleeping. "It's too early for you to feel it from outside," Lena explained, "but it's there, real, moving." Adrian's expression had shifted through wonder to something more complex. Fear, maybe, or the weight of impending responsibility, made tangible. Now, 2 weeks later, the movements had become more frequent. Lena found herself constantly aware of the small life growing inside her, this person she and Adrian had accidentally created who would change everything. The nursery took shape under Mrs. Chen's careful supervision. Adrian had given Lena carte blanche on design decisions, and she'd chosen soft neutrals and natural wood, creating a space that felt peaceful rather than ostentatiously decorated. A rocking chair sat by the window. A crib waited, still empty but ready. One evening in late January, as Lena stood in the nursery doorway looking at everything they'd prepared, Adrian appeared beside her. "Having second thoughts?" "More like 50th thoughts. 100th, maybe." She touched her stomach, feeling the baby shift. "In 5 months, there's going to be an actual person who needs us, who depends on us for everything, and I have no idea what I'm doing." "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out." He paused, then added quietly, "Together." The word had become their anchor. Together. Partners. Two people learning to navigate parenthood and an unconventional marriage simultaneously. But the outside world had other plans. The threat came not as violence, but as exposure. On a cold morning in February, Marcus appeared at breakfast with his phone out and his expression grim. "We have a situation." Adrian took the phone, his face going carefully blank as he read whatever was displayed. Lena watched the muscle in his jaw tick, the only outward sign of his reaction. "What is it?" she asked. "Someone leaked our marriage certificate, the original one. They're publishing the dates, timeline, everything, proving you were pregnant before the wedding. Lena's stomach dropped. How? City Hall employee, most likely. Paid off by someone who wants to damage my reputation. Adrian set the phone down with controlled precision. It's going public this afternoon. We need to decide how to respond. What are our options? Ignore it completely, deny it, or control the narrative by confirming it on our terms. Adrian looked at her directly. This is your choice as much as mine. Your privacy, your story. I'll follow your lead. Lena thought about the whispers, the speculation, Victoria Ashford's knowing smiles. The truth was coming out whether they wanted it to or not. Maybe honesty, carefully packaged, was better than letting others define their story. We confirm it, she said, but we do it carefully. Frame it as a love story. Married quickly because we couldn't wait. Baby came soon after as a happy surprise. Not a lie, exactly, just the truth from a specific angle. Adrian nodded slowly. I'll have my PR team draft a statement, something simple, heartfelt, that doesn't invite further questions. The statement went out that afternoon through official channels, confirming the timeline while emphasizing the couple's happiness about the pregnancy. Adrian added a personal touch, a quote about how sometimes the best things in life aren't planned, they're discovered. The response was mixed. Some of the city's elites sneered, their suspicions confirmed, but others, particularly those outside Adrian's immediate social circle, found the story romantic. Young couple, whirlwind marriage, baby on the way. It was the stuff of fairy tales, if you didn't look too closely at the edges. That night, exhausted by the day's crisis management, Lena found Adrian on the deck where they'd stood during the safe house isolation. He was staring at the city lights, tension radiating from every line of his body. Are you okay? She asked. I'm furious. Someone violated our privacy, exposed our personal life for profit or revenge. And I can't even retaliate properly because any response would make things worse. His hands gripped the railing. I hate feeling powerless. You're not powerless. You handled it perfectly. Took control of the narrative before anyone else could. It shouldn't have been necessary in the first place. He turned to face her. I'm sorry. This is my world, my enemies, my mess. And you're the one paying for it. We're paying for it, Lena corrected. Together, remember? Adrian's expression softened fractionally. Together. Yes. They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Lena spoke again. I've been thinking about what you said at Christmas, about wanting to build something different, something our child can be proud of. And? And I think you should start, not someday, not eventually, now. Begin transitioning away from the illegal operations. Build the legitimate empire you're capable of building. It's not that simple. Nothing about our situation is simple, Lena interrupted. But in 5 months, we're going to have a daughter or son who will grow up watching how we navigate the world, what lessons we teach through our choices. Don't you want those lessons to be about transformation, about choosing to be better? Adrian was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. My father was an enforcer for the Russian mob. Brutal, efficient, completely amoral. He died in prison when I was 12. I swore I'd never end up like him, that I'd be smarter, more controlled. And I have been. But I'm still walking the same gray roads he did, just with better shoes. So stop walking them. Choose a different path. The people I'd be leaving behind, the power vacuum I'd create, can be managed if you're strategic about it. You're brilliant at strategy, Adrian. Apply that brilliance to building something clean. Lena moved closer, took his hand. Let this baby be this catalyst. Let them change you into who you want to be. You make it sound possible. It is possible. Hard, but possible. And you don't have to do it alone. Adrian pulled her into an embrace, careful of her growing stomach, his arms secure around her. When did you become so wise? Probably around the time I agreed to marry a stranger to save my mother's life. Desperation breeds clarity. His laugh was soft against her hair. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Two desperate people trying to build something good from impossible circumstances. It's working, though, Lena said. Slowly, messily, but it's working. The next morning, Adrian called a meeting with his top lieutenants. Lena wasn't present, but he told her about it afterward, how he'd laid out a 5-year plan to transition the organization entirely to legitimate operations. how he'd offered generous severance to anyone who wanted out, opportunities for those willing to transition with him, how he'd mapped the careful dismantling of an empire he'd spent years building. Not everyone was happy. Two of his senior people walked out immediately, but others, surprisingly, expressed relief. They had families too, children who asked innocent questions about what Daddy did for work. The promise of legitimacy, of being able to answer honestly, held appeal. In March, as Lena entered her third trimester, they learned they were having a girl. The ultrasound technician had asked if they wanted to know, and they'd both said yes simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise at their synchronization. "It's a girl," Maya announced with a warm smile, pointing to the screen. "See? Very clearly a girl." Lena stared at the image, so much more detailed now than that first blob with a flickering heartbeat. She could see fingers, toes, the curve of a nose. A whole person, almost complete, just waiting to be born. Adrian's hand found hers, squeezed gently. When she looked at him, his eyes were bright with unshed emotion. "A daughter," he said, voice rough. "We're having a daughter." In the car afterward, they sat in the parking lot for a long time, processing. "Are you okay?" Lena asked. "I'm terrified," Adrian admitted. "I know how this world treats women, especially women connected to men like me. The vulnerability, the ways she'll be targeted, used as leverage." He broke off, jaw clenched. "I want to lock her in a tower and never let anything touch her. We'll teach her to be strong instead, to protect herself, to navigate your world, our world, with intelligence and courage." Lena touched her stomach. "She's going to be okay, Adrian. We'll make sure of it." "You're so certain." "I have to be. The alternative is paralyzing fear, and I can't afford that right now." They decided on a name that night, Elena, after Lena, but different enough to be her own person. Elena Volkov, their daughter. The rest of March and April passed in a blur of preparation. The nursery was finalized, hospital bags were packed. Lena attended birthing classes that Adrian joined via video when he couldn't be there in person. Her mother, fully recovered now, fussed over her constantly, excited and anxious in equal measure. The baby grew. Lena's body transformed in ways both beautiful and uncomfortable. Her back ached, her feet swelled. She couldn't sleep comfortably, couldn't eat large meals without heartburn. But she could feel Elena moving constantly now, strong kicks and rolls that sometimes made Lena's whole stomach shift visibly. Adrian became increasingly attentive as the due date approached. He worked from home more, stayed close, his hand constantly finding her stomach to feel his daughter move. At night, Lena sometimes woke to find him sitting in the chair by her bed, just watching her sleep, as if keeping vigil. "You don't have to do that," she told him one night when she caught him. "I'm fine. We're both fine. I know, I need to make sure that you're really here, that this is really happening." He looked almost embarrassed by the admission. "I keep expecting to wake up and find out this was all some elaborate dream." "It's real. We're real." Lena held out her hand. "Come here." He moved to sit on the edge of her bed, careful not to jostle her. Lena took his hand and pressed it against where Elena was currently kicking up a storm. "Feel that? She's real too, and she's going to be here soon whether we're ready or not." Adrian's expression softened as he felt their daughter's movements. "I'm not ready, not even close." "Neither am I, but I don't think anyone ever really is." In late April, with 3 weeks left until the due date, the final threat materialized. Marcus appeared during dinner, his face grim. "We have a situation. Dmitry Kozlov just made contact. He wants a meeting." The name made Adrian go rigid. Lena watched the color drain from his face, replaced by cold fury. "Kozlov? What does he want?" "He didn't say. Just that it concerns your family. That you'd want to hear what he has to offer." "Who's Kozlov?" Lena asked. Adrian's jaw clenched. "My father's old boss. The man he died protecting. He's been in Russia for years, supposedly retired. If he's here, it's not for anything good." "Should I come with you to this meeting?" "Absolutely not. You're staying here where it's safe. I'll handle Kozlov." But even as he said it, doubt flickered across his features. The meeting happened the next day at a neutral location, a restaurant Adrian owned, closed for the occasion, swept for surveillance. Lena waited at home, pacing despite her ungainly movements, her phone clutched in her hand. Adrian returned 3 hours later looking like he'd aged years. He went straight to his study, poured a drink, downed it, then poured another. Lena followed him. What happened? What did Kozlov want? He made me an offer, a very generous offer. Adrian's voice was hollow. He's expanding his operations into the States. Needs someone local to manage things. He wants me to come work for him. Full partnership, unlimited resources, protection from all enemies. That's ridiculous. You're transitioning out of illegal work, not diving deeper into it. He knows that. He's been watching me, tracking my moves, and he's not pleased about the direction I'm taking. Adrian finally looked at her. He suggested that my sudden interest in legitimacy was weakness, that fatherhood had made me soft, that I was betraying my father's legacy. Your father's legacy is dying in prison. Why would you want to honor that? Exactly what I told him. He didn't take it well. Adrian set down his glass carefully. He made a threat, subtle, wrapped in concern, but clear. He suggested that families are vulnerabilities, that accidents happen to pregnant women, that it would be tragic if something happened to you or the baby. The words landed like ice water. Lena's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. He threatened us. Not explicitly. Nothing I could act on legally. But the implication was crystal clear. Join him or face consequences. What are you going to do? Adrian's eyes met hers, and she saw something dangerous there, something primal and protective. I'm going to eliminate him as a threat, permanently. Before you go into labor, before our daughter is born into a world where Dmitry Kozlov exists as a danger to her. Adrian, I know what I said about choosing a different path, about building something legitimate, and I still want that. But first, I need to make sure the path is safe to walk. That means dealing with Kozlov. How? I have leverage he doesn't know about. Evidence, connections, enough to bury him completely if I use it right. But it's going to be dangerous, and I need you somewhere safe while I handle it. The safe house? Better. Out of the country entirely. Your mother, too. I've already arranged a private flight to Canada, a secure location in Vancouver. You'll be gone for 2 weeks at most. By the time you return, Kozlov won't be a problem anymore. Lena wanted to argue, to insist on staying, but the rational part of her brain understood. She was 37 weeks pregnant. She couldn't fight, couldn't help, would only be a liability if something went wrong. Promise me you'll be careful, she said. I promise. And I promise this is the last time. After Kozlov, I'm done. No more threats to neutralize, no more enemies to eliminate. Just the slow, boring work of running legitimate businesses and raising our daughter. They left for Canada the next morning. The flight was smooth, the accommodation luxurious, a penthouse apartment overlooking the water. Patricia settled in with relief, happy to be away from the tension. But Lena spent her days on edge, checking her phone constantly for updates. Adrian called twice a day, morning and evening, keeping her informed without giving dangerous details. Kozlov was being handled. The evidence was being leveraged properly. Things were progressing. On day 6, Lena woke to cramping. She tried to ignore it, assuming it was the normal discomforts of late pregnancy. But as the day wore on, the cramps intensified into something more regular, more insistent. By evening, she knew. Mom, she called out, trying to keep her voice calm. I think I'm in labor. Patricia appeared immediately, assessed her with practiced eyes. How far apart are the contractions? Maybe 8 minutes? They've been going for a few hours. We need to call Adrian, get you to a hospital. I can't go to the hospital here. I need to get home. To my doctors, my hospital. Lena, you can't fly in active labor. It's not safe. But Lena was already dialing Adrian's number. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? I'm in labor. Contractions are 8 minutes apart, regular. I need to come home. A beat of silence. You can't fly. It's too dangerous. I'm not having our daughter in a foreign country surrounded by strangers. I need to be home. Please, Adrian. Make it happen. Another pause. Give me 2 hours. I'll arrange a medical transport flight. Doctors, equipment, everything. If your labor progresses too quickly, they can deliver there safely, but we'll try to get you home. True to his word, 2 hours later, a medical team arrived at the apartment. They examined Lena, confirmed she was in early labor, but not progressing dangerously fast. The flight to the private airfield, the specialized plane equipped like a flying hospital room, the careful monitoring throughout the journey, Adrian had thought of everything. Lena labored through the flight, her mother holding her hand through contractions, the medical team watching carefully. By the time they landed, her contractions were 5 minutes apart and intensifying. Adrian met them at the airfield, looking haggard and terrified. He helped her into the waiting car, his hand gripping hers tightly. Kozlov? She gasped between contractions. Dealt with. He's on a plane to Russia permanently. He won't bother us again, but we can talk about that later. Right now, we need to get you to the hospital. The drive was a blur of pain and pressure. Lena focused on breathing, on the techniques she'd learned in birthing classes, on Adrian's voice, talking her through each contraction. At the hospital, Dr. Harrison was waiting. They wheeled her directly to a delivery room, got her settled, checked her progress. You're at 6 centimeters, Dr. Harrison announced. Moving quickly, we'll have a baby by morning. The next hours were a haze of increasing pain and intensity. Adrian stayed throughout, holding her hand, talking to her during contractions, stepping back when the medical team needed space. Patricia was there too, offering comfort and encouragement, her eyes bright with tears. At 4:47 a.m., as dawn began to lighten the sky outside, Elena Volkov entered the world with an angry cry that announced her displeasure at being evicted from her comfortable home. It's a girl, Dr. Harrison said unnecessarily, placing the squirming, red-faced baby on Lena's chest. A beautiful, healthy girl. Lena stared at her daughter through tears, overwhelmed by the rush of emotion. This was real. This person, this tiny human with dark hair and scrunched-up features, was hers. Theirs. Adrian stood frozen beside the bed, staring at Elena with an expression of pure wonder. When Dr. Harrison asked if he wanted to cut the umbilical cord, he moved like he was in a dream, his hands shaking as he performed the simple task. After the medical team cleaned and weighed Elena, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, healthy and perfect, they handed her to Adrian. He took his daughter with infinite care, as if she might shatter, and just looked at her, tears tracked down his face unchecked. Hello, Elena, he whispered. I'm your father, and I promise I'm going to spend the rest of my life keeping you safe and making you proud. Lena watched him with their daughter and felt something in her chest crack open. This was what transformation looked like. Not dramatic declarations or grand gestures, but a man holding his child and understanding, finally, what truly mattered. Later, when the excitement had calmed and Elena was sleeping in her bassinet, Adrian sat beside Lena's hospital bed. I meant what I said, to her, the promise. His voice was quiet but determined. Everything I've done, everything I've been, it all changes now. She's what matters. You both are. I know, Lena said, exhausted but content. I can see it in how you look at her. How do I look at her? Like she's the most miraculous thing you've ever seen, like she's rewritten all your priorities in a single moment. Adrian took Lena's hand, raised it to his lips. She has. But so have you. Somewhere in this impossible situation we created, I stopped seeing you as a transaction, as part of my carefully controlled life. You became, he paused, searching for words, essential, real. Someone I want, not because a contract says so, but because I genuinely want you in my life. Lena's breath caught. Adrian, I'm not asking for anything, not demanding declarations or promises. I just wanted you to know that what started as business has become something else entirely, at least for me. Before she could respond, Elena made a small sound, drawing both their attention. Adrian stood and lifted their daughter carefully, brought her to Lena for feeding. As Elena latched on and began to nurse, Lena looked at the two of them, this man who'd bought her as a wife and this baby they'd accidentally created, and understood that despite the unconventional beginning, despite the contracts and complications, they'd somehow built something real, something worth keeping. The first weeks of Elena's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and steep learning curves. Lena discovered that nothing, no book, no class, no amount of preparation, could fully prepare someone for the reality of caring for a newborn. Elena was demanding, colicky, and seemed to have her days and nights completely reversed, but she was also perfect. Absolutely, impossibly perfect. Adrian transformed in ways Lena hadn't anticipated. The man who'd once maintained careful emotional distance now spent hours holding his daughter, talking to her in soft Russian, his face unguarded in a way Lena had never seen. He changed diapers without complaint, handled 3 a.m. feedings when Lena was too exhausted to move, and approached fatherhood with the same intense focus he'd once applied to building his empire. One night, around 2 weeks after Elena's birth, Lena found him in the nursery at midnight. Elena was fussy, crying despite being fed and changed. Adrian walked slow circles with her, murmuring quietly. "She won't settle," he said when he noticed Lena in the doorway. "I've tried everything." "Let me take her. You need sleep too." "I don't mind. You should rest." But Lena could see the exhaustion in his face, the strain of 2 weeks of broken sleep and constant vigilance. She crossed to him, took Elena gently, and felt the baby immediately begin to calm against her chest. "It's the heartbeat," Lena explained. "She recognizes it from the pregnancy. Sometimes that's all she needs." They stood together in the soft glow of the nightlight, Elena's cries subsiding to small hiccups and then silence. Adrian's hand came to rest on Lena's shoulder, his touch warm and grounding. "I never knew it would feel like this," he said quietly. "The fear. Every time she cries, every small sound she makes, I'm terrified something's wrong, that I'm failing her somehow." "You're not failing, you're learning. We both are. I'm also terrified of failing you." His admission came soft, vulnerable. "We started this as a transaction, but it's become so much more. And I don't know how to navigate that, how to be a husband when I've never learned how." Lena looked up at him, seeing the genuine uncertainty in his pale eyes. "You're doing better than you think. You're here. You're trying. That's more than a lot of men manage. It doesn't feel like enough. It's enough for now. The rest we'll figure out as we go." Elena had fallen completely asleep against Lena's chest, her tiny face peaceful. Together they laid her in the crib, watching her settle with the anxious attention of new parents convinced their baby might spontaneously stop breathing if unwatched. As they walked back toward their separate bedrooms, Adrian paused outside Lena's door. "Would you—" He stopped, started again. "Would you consider moving into my room? Not for any romantic expectation," he added quickly, "just so we're closer at night. So when Elena needs us, we can handle it together instead of in shifts." The suggestion was practical, sensible even, but it felt like crossing a threshold they'd been dancing around since Elena's birth. "Okay," Lena said. "Give me a few days to think about it. This is a big step." "Of course. Take whatever time you need." But even as she said it, Lena knew her answer would be yes. They were already partners in parenting. Why maintain the fiction of distance when reality had brought them so close? 3 days later, with Mrs. Chen's help, Lena moved her belongings into Adrian's room. It was larger than hers, with enough space for both of them without feeling cramped. Adrian had already cleared drawers, made room in the closet, approached the arrangement with the same practical efficiency he applied to everything. That first night felt strange and awkward. They changed into pajamas in careful silence, hyper-aware of each other's presence. The bed was enormous, but sharing it with another person after months of sleeping alone felt intimate in ways Lena hadn't anticipated. Adrian settled on his side, maintaining a respectful distance. "If this is uncomfortable, we can—" "It's fine," Lena interrupted. "Just new. We'll adjust." And they did. Over the following weeks, the awkwardness faded into routine. They developed an unspoken choreography, Adrian handling the first night feeding while Lena slept, Lena taking the second while he rested. They learned each other's sleep patterns, unconscious habits, the small vulnerabilities that come with sharing space. One morning in late May, Lena woke to find Adrian already up, sitting in the chair by the window with Elena cradled in his arms. Soft morning light filtered through the curtains, painting them both in gold. "She was fussy," he explained quietly. "Didn't want to wake you." Lena watched them together, her daughter and the man who'd been a stranger 8 months ago, and felt something shift in her chest. Affection, she recognized. Maybe the beginning of something deeper. "Adrian, I need to tell you something." He looked up, concern flickering across his features. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I've been thinking about what you said in the hospital, about this becoming something more than business." She sat up, tucking the covers around herself. "I feel it too. Somewhere along the way, you stopped being the man I married for money and became someone I actually care about, someone I want in my life beyond the contract or the baby." Adrian's expression shifted through surprise to something softer. "You care about me." "Don't let it go to your head," Lena said, but she was smiling. "You're still controlling and emotionally distant half the time, but you're also kind when you think no one's watching. And you're an amazing father, and I trust you in ways I never expected to trust anyone." "I care about you too." The words came carefully, as if he was testing their weight. more than I thought possible. You walked into my carefully controlled life and made it messy and complicated and somehow better. I don't know what to call what we have, but I know I don't want to lose it." "Then don't." Lena held out her hand. "Come back to bed. Bring our daughter. Let's just be a family for a while." Adrian settled beside her. Elena nestled between them. They lay like that as the sun rose. Three people who'd found each other through impossible circumstances and chosen to stay. In June, Adrian made his final major move toward legitimacy. He sold off the last of his illegal operations to carefully vetted buyers who wouldn't create worse problems than the ones they solved. The money, staggering amounts of it, went into expansion of his legitimate businesses and into a foundation he'd established in Elena's name. The foundation focused on helping families afford medical treatment, providing the kind of financial support that had once driven Lena into his arms. It was poetic justice, Lena thought, watching him pour money into saving other desperate people from having to make the choices she'd made. "This is what she'll inherit," Adrian explained as they reviewed the foundation's first quarterly report. "Not an empire built on gray morality, but something that actually helps people. Something she can be proud of." Lena's mother, now fully recovered and helping with Elena several days a week, had integrated into their unconventional family with surprising ease. She'd been skeptical at first about Adrian's transformation, but watching him with Elena had softened her concerns. "He loves you both," Patricia told Lena one afternoon while they folded baby clothes together. "I can see it in how he looks at you, like you're the answer to questions he didn't know he was asking." "He's never said it. The word love, I mean. Some people show it better than they say it. Your father was like that, terrible with words, but his actions spoke volumes." Patricia smoothed a tiny onesie. Adrian making his whole business legitimate, establishing that foundation, moving heaven and earth to get you home for Elena's birth? Those are love languages, honey, just in a different dialect. Later that evening, as Lena nursed Elena before bed, she thought about her mother's words. Adrian had never said he loved her, but he'd shown it in countless ways. The prenatal vitamins appearing without comment, the way he held her during the pregnancy exposure crisis, his confession in the hospital, the foundation built in their daughter's name. Maybe words weren't necessary. Maybe actions were enough. But the universe had one more test for them. In early July, on Elena's 2-month birthday, Marcus appeared during breakfast with news that made Adrian go rigid. "Kozlov is back. He landed in the city last night." The name sent ice through Lena's veins. She thought that threat was neutralized, eliminated permanently. "That's impossible," Adrian said flatly. "I made sure he understood the consequences of returning." "Apparently he didn't care. He's requested a meeting, says he has information you'll want to hear about your father." Adrian's jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. "My father died 25 years ago. What information could he possibly have?" "He wouldn't say. Just that it changes everything you think you know." The meeting was arranged for that afternoon at the same restaurant as before. This time Adrian insisted on additional security, armed guards, surveillance, every precaution. And this time, despite his protests, Lena insisted on coming. "If this affects our family, I have a right to know," she said firmly. "I'm not sitting at home wondering while you handle this alone." They compromised. Lena would be in an adjacent room, able to hear everything through Marcus's surveillance equipment, but not visible to Kozlov. Safe, but present. Dmitry Kozlov looked older than his photograph suggested. 70s, weathered, with the hard eyes of someone who'd done terrible things and slept fine afterward. He sat across from Adrian with the casual confidence of someone who held all the cards. "You've been busy," Kozlov said in heavily accented English. "Selling off your operations, going legitimate. Your father would be ashamed." "My father's been dead for 25 years. His opinion is irrelevant." "Is he?" Kozlov smiled, and it was deeply unpleasant. "That's what I came to tell you. Your father isn't dead, Adrian. He's alive. And he's been in Russia all this time, working for me." The words hung in the air like grenades. Through the surveillance feed, Lena watched Adrian's face go absolutely blank, the expression he wore when processing something too massive to immediately comprehend. "You're lying." "Am I? Why would I lie about something so easily disproven?" Kozlov pulled out his phone, turned it toward Adrian. "This was taken 3 weeks ago. Still think I'm lying?" Lena couldn't see the phone screen, but she saw Adrian's reaction, the color draining from his face. the way his hands clenched on the table. He let me believe, for 25 years, he let me believe he was dead. Why? Protection. When he took the fall for that job, he knew his enemies would come after his family. You, your mother. So he faked his death. Got him out of prison, out of the country. Let everyone believe he was gone. Kozlov pocketed his phone. He's watched your career from afar. Been very proud. Until recently. Until I decided to go legitimate. Until you decided to waste your potential on legal businesses and foundations. Until you let a woman and a baby make you soft. Kozlov leaned forward. Your father wants to see you. In Russia. Alone. He has a proposal. Come work with us. Bring your considerable talents to the organization. Or refuse and never speak to him again. Your choice. Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was ice. Tell my father that the man he knew, the 12-year-old boy he abandoned, doesn't exist anymore. I built my life believing he was dead. I'm not interested in resurrecting him now, and I'm certainly not interested in joining his organization. He thought you might say that, so he asked me to tell you something. He has information about your medical condition, the sterility you've believed in for years. He knows why it happened, who caused it. Lena saw Adrian freeze. What are you talking about? The infection that made you sterile. It wasn't random. It was induced. Someone wanted to ensure you'd never have children, never have heirs. Your father knows who, but he'll only tell you in person. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Adrian's sterility hadn't been chance or bad luck. It had been deliberate, targeted, and he'd had a child anyway. Who? Adrian's voice was deadly quiet. Come to Russia. Hear it from your father directly. Or spend the rest of your life wondering. Kozlov stood. You have 1 week to decide. After that, the offer expires and your father goes back to pretending you don't exist. He left without waiting for a response. Lena found Adrian still sitting at the table, staring at nothing. She slid into the seat Kozlov had vacated, took his cold hands in hers. Are you okay? My father is alive. Someone deliberately tried to ensure I could never have children. And I have to decide whether to walk back into that world or let it all go. His eyes focused on her finally. What do I do? What do you want to do? I want to know who hurt me, who tried to steal my future. His grip on her hands tightened. But I also know that going to Russia, meeting with my father, opening that door, it risks everything we've built, everything we're trying to become. Then don't go. Let it stay a mystery. Some questions aren't worth the cost of their answers. And if the person who did this is still out there, still a threat, then we deal with it here, on our terms, together. Lena met his eyes directly. Your father abandoned you, let you believe he was dead for 25 years. He doesn't get to manipulate you back into his world now just because he has information. That's not love, Adrian. That's leverage. Something in Adrian's expression shifted, clarity cutting through confusion. You're right. He's trying to pull me back in. Use my need for answers to control me. Exactly. And you're stronger than that. Better than that. Adrian pulled her into an embrace, holding tight. What did I do to deserve you? You made a desperate bargain with a scared girl and then spent 8 months becoming someone worthy of her trust. Lena pulled back to look at him. You don't need your father's approval or his information. You have Elena. You have me. You have a life here. That's enough. It is, Adrian said, and sounded like he was convincing himself as much as agreeing with her. It's more than enough. He called Kozlov that evening and delivered his answer simply. Tell my father I'm not coming. Tell him I have a family of my own now, and I'm not interested in resurrections or revenge or whatever game you're playing. I'm done with that life. If he wants to be part of mine, he can come here, meet his granddaughter, and prove he's changed. Otherwise, he can stay dead as far as I'm concerned. Kozlov's response was a cold laugh and a hung-up phone. But 3 days later, a package arrived. No return address, postmarked from Moscow. Inside was a thick folder of documents and a single photograph. The photograph showed a young Adrian, maybe 13 or 14, standing beside a man who looked enough like him to be his father. Both were unsmiling, the tension between them visible even through the old film grain. The documents were medical records, detailed reports of Adrian's infection and subsequent sterility. And buried in them, Lena found notes in Russian that Adrian translated with shaking hands. The infection had been induced by a rival organization as revenge for something Adrian's father had done. They'd targeted Adrian specifically because they knew it would hurt his father most. The whole thing had been deliberate, calculated cruelty. They took my future because my father took something from them, Adrian said, his voice hollow. I was just collateral damage in someone else's war. But you got your future back anyway. Lena touched his arm gently. Despite what they did, despite the impossible odds, you have Elena. They tried to take something from you, and the universe gave it back. Adrian looked at the photograph of himself and his father, then at the medical records, then at Lena. Slowly, deliberately, he fed both into the fireplace and watched them burn. You're right. What they took doesn't matter anymore. I have everything I need. That night, after Elena was asleep and they were alone in their shared room, Adrian pulled a document from his desk drawer. I have something for you. I've been waiting for the right moment, and I hope, this is it. He handed Lena a legal document. She read it carefully, her breath catching as she understood what she was seeing. This is the original prenuptial agreement. Was the original prenuptial agreement, Adrian corrected. I'm voiding it, completely. No divorce clause, no end date, no contractual obligations. If you want to leave, you can. Take half of everything, full custody of Elena, whatever you want. But if you stay, it's because you choose to, not because a contract says you have to. Lena stared at the document, then at him. What are you saying? I'm saying I want a real marriage. Not a business arrangement, not a transaction, but an actual partnership built on choice and trust, and, he paused, took a breath, and love. Because I love you, Lena. I don't know when it happened. Maybe gradually over months, or maybe all at once the night Elena was born. But I love you, and I love the family we've built, and I don't want it to be fake anymore. The word she'd been waiting for, delivered with the vulnerable honesty of someone taking a terrifying leap. I love you too, Lena said, tears streaming down her face. I've been falling for you piece by piece since you held me while I cried about Victoria Ashford, since you learned to change diapers and started talking to Elena in Russian, since you chose to stay with me during labor instead of handling Kozlov. Adrian crossed to her, took the document from her hands, and fed it into the fireplace alongside the photographs and medical records. They watched it burn together, the contract that had brought them together dissolving into ash. So we're really doing this, Adrian asked. Real marriage, real life, no safety nets. We've been doing this for months already. We just made it official. He kissed her then, properly, for the first time since their drunken wedding night. It was gentle and searching and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both of them were crying. I never thought I'd find this, Adrian whispered. Never thought I was capable of it. Neither did I. But here we are. They spent that night talking about their future. Adrian's plans for expanding the foundation. Lena's interest in going back to school, studying social work so she could help run the foundation properly. Whether they wanted more children, where they'd travel once Elena was old enough. All the mundane, beautiful plans of people building a real life together. In August, they renewed their vows in a small ceremony attended only by Lena's mother, Marcus, Mrs. Chen, and a handful of close friends. No society watchers, no business associates, no one who'd judged their unconventional beginning, just the people who'd supported them through the transformation. The vows were simple. Adrian promised to choose her every day, to be worthy of her trust, to build a life their daughter would be proud of. Lena promised to stand beside him through fear and change, to love him not despite his complicated past, but including it, to be his partner in all things. When they kissed, Elena, held by her grandmother in the front row, let out a squeal that made everyone laugh. She approves, Patricia said, beaming. That evening, as they stood on the deck watching the city lights, Lena thought about the journey that had brought them here. A desperate bargain made in a convenience store at 3 a.m. A pregnancy that should have been impossible. Threats and safe houses and learning to trust someone who'd bought her like property. None of it had been easy. None of it had followed any script or expectation. But here they were, a real family built from impossible circumstances and stubborn hope. Adrian's arm came around her waist, pulling her close. What are you thinking about? About how if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be standing here married to you for real, raising our daughter, completely happy, I would have thought they were insane. Would you change any of it if you could go back? Lena considered the question seriously. The fear, the uncertainty, The moments when she'd felt like she was drowning, but also the transformation, the unexpected love, the family she'd gained. No, she said finally. I wouldn't change a thing. Every terrible, beautiful moment led us here. That's worth preserving. Even the part where I accused you of cheating when you told me you were pregnant. Even that. Though you're still an asshole for that one. Adrian laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Fair enough. I'll spend the rest of our life making it up to you. I'm going to hold you to that. They stood together as stars emerged above the city. 3 people, soon to be 4, if the positive pregnancy test Lena had taken that morning was accurate, building something unprecedented. Not perfect, because perfect wasn't real, but true, and hard-won, and theirs. Inside the house, Elena started to cry. Adrian and Lena turned together, moving as one unit back toward their daughter. Partners. Equals. A family forged in fire and impossibility and stubborn, imperfect love. The contract that had brought them together was ash now, but what they'd built from it was solid, real, and strong enough to last a lifetime. As they reached the nursery and Lena lifted their daughter, soothing her cries, Adrian's hand found the small of her back. The gesture was familiar now, comfortable, theirs. I love you, he said quietly, the words no longer difficult or strange. I love you too, Lena replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Elena settled against her mother's chest, her cries fading to contented sounds. 3 people, soon to be 4, who'd found each other through desperation and stayed through choice. It wasn't the fairy tale Lena had imagined as a girl. It was better. It was real. And real, imperfect, hard-won love was worth more than any fantasy.